and welcome to another episode of The Grindbin. I'm Mike Wood.
I'm Chris Mann.
I'm Iago Faustus.
And today we're talking about 1934's Maniac and 1936's Marijuana.
We're going deep into the grind past here.
Hey, Bobby, I got the money.
Dad, I made the team. But you're a hooker.
Get that goddamn thing out of your mouth.
I didn't say it, knocker. I don't know.
Spooky got no real rhythm.
Hello, Mr. Man.
We're gonna play a little game, baby.
I just love funny games. Get a little girl all hot and horny.
This is Los Angeles.
How the hell would women live? I'm horny. And maybe Daddy wouldn't have had to kill himself because he couldn't get it up anymore.
What a shame.
It's for jacking off. Come on, just step on the gas before we get cream and more.
So, guys, you've noticed a new voice on this show. Faustus, longtime listener and patron.
Grindbin legend, if you will.
Yeah, really.
Yes, yeah.
I think you're considered one of the Grindbin 4, and you, a long time ago, got Mann and I to watch B-Girls.
That's right. Oh, wow. That one. Yes.
I'm so pleased I finally got somebody to watch B-Girls.
Oh, we wish we hadn't, but I'm glad we did.
Well, I'm noticing your trend of referring movies to us is that every movie you've had us watch is in the public domain.
Yes, well,
Yeah, so that way we can have our own Grindbin screening to the public.
Yeah.
And we're charging 20 a head.
And this is also our first double feature because both of these movies are 1930s exploitation movies, and they're just a little over 50 minutes. I thought it would make a good double feature for the bin.
Yeah, you would think people had less attention spans back then with the time these both are, but
I think people had very small budgets for these particular movies.
exactly.
This is way back in the past. I think it must be, 30 years earlier than anything else that's appeared on the bin. I haven't heard every episode, but
I think so. I don't think we've ever covered. I think probably the earliest movie until today was Bucket of Blood,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
which I'm not sure the exact year on that, but I believe probably early 60s. I think might be late 50s.
1959, 58, I think.
No, you got it beat by almost 30 years. But Faustus, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and let them know where they could find you? Get the plugs out early. You know?
Okay, well, here are the plugs. Basically, I am an amateur comics writer. I publish comics at a site called eroticmadscience.com. Right now, I'm publishing something by my friend and colleague Vinny Tesla, part of my long-going series called Tales of Gnosis College. And I've also got the multilingual comic Bait coming out, the erotic horror, anti-capitalist satire, black humor, graphic novella. We have it in 6 languages so far. We've got about 5 more coming. And you can find it over there at the site. So there are the plugs. I've been listening to the Grindbin for a long time. I think about as long as you've been going, or possibly at least since about episode 10.
Yeah, we're about to hit our 3-year anniversary, it sounds like.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there I am, and I'm delighted to be here.
Delighted to have you.
Oh, of course. Yes. You've been with us a long time, and very early on, you helped out Chris and I with getting this show off the ground. You have been here since the beginning, helping us, and we can't thank you enough. And we're just happy that you even want to join us on the show.
Well, like I said in the introductory, I feel like a kid on Christmas morning. I'm really glad to be here.
Oh, I should also say you have behind the scenes also been responsible for one of my favorite movies I knew nothing about. You have another movie. Not only did you get us to watch B-Girls and these 2 movies, you also sent me a physical copy of Robotrix.
That I did.
Oh,
Although I've got to say, I've always pronounced it Robotrix.
Okay.
I don't think that there's a right answer to how this thing is supposed to be pronounced. I mean, it's from Hong Kong after all. But I always thought it should scan like RoboCop.
Yeah, okay,
because it's like a movie with a similar theme, and why not?
So you spent the whole episode just going, no.
It's just like I thought, okay, that's one way. That makes sense, but you could also do it another way.
I just like the idea of you listening to going, they took it that way, huh?
Yeah.
So the movies today, why don't you give the audience a little bit of background, Faustus, about exploitation of the 30s? Because this is something that our audience and most people probably know nothing about, is that exploitation films were a thing back in the 1930s.
Well, they definitely were, and they sort of came into their own after 1930 when the major and the minor studios started to comply with the production code. This is a famous piece of industry self-censorship that they put in place because they were threatened with real censorship. And so the big studios, right, the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayers, Paramount, 20th Century Fox, Warner, RKO, United Artists, Columbia, Universal, as well as various minors like Grand National, Republic, and Monogram, all comply with a code that tells you various things, like you can't have crime triumph, you have to be very careful about dealing with anything with drugs, sex and nudity are mostly out. And this creates a market for people who are operating somewhere near the bottom of the Hollywood world to start creating their own movies where we're just not going to comply with the code. Now, of course, they live in a world where they face a lot of potential censorship from outside. You have to remember that there is no First Amendment protection for movies until 1952. So anyone who wants to make a movie has to cope with a large number of sort of local licensing and censorship boards. And at the outer extreme of what they might be doing, they also have to deal with obscenity law as well. So they end up making a lot of movies that are of a very peculiar kind. What they're doing is, first of all, they are working outside of standard distribution channels. They do not, like the major studios, own movie houses. They have to find other places to show their movies. And so this is where some of the original grindhouses get some of their material. They get it through a distribution channel called States Writing, where instead of having their own distribution, a movie would be handed over to someone who has responsibility for a given territory, typically a given state. And the state's writer would then circulate this movie around to wherever they could get someone to show it. Whereas with a major studio, you might have someone producing hundreds and hundreds of prints and national publicity, and the movie shows at hundreds of houses owned by the studio all over the country. Here you would have a very small number of prints. They'd go out to individual states writers, and they would be shown wherever they could find a place to put it. There's an interesting a fictionalized depiction of states writing in a movie that I'm sure you've seen. You know Ed Wood?
Oh, of course.
Of course.
All right. You know the scene where Ed goes to see this guy, Georgie Weiss, this crap producer?
Right.
At the start of the movie where he's going to try to persuade Weiss to help let Ed be the director of the film that's going to become Glenn or Glenda.
Right.
Yes.
And when he comes into the office, Weiss is on the phone screaming at somebody, or having a very unpleasant conversation, saying, "I told you the Western Territories, but I only meant California, Oregon, and what's that one on top?" That's a states writing conversation. He doesn't do his own distribution. He just produces his crap and then gives it to someone who gets to set it around. That was one of their performance practices, or one of their distribution practices. Another one, which was more dramatic, was something called road showing.
Yes.
And in road showing, you get your movie, you roll into town, you print up your own your materials, and then you get a theater, you put down your own cashier in the box office, and you show your movie. And since a lot of the guys who are making these movies, including the guy who made the movies that we're going to talk about today, Dwayne Esper, started in the carnival world, a lot of these performances had things that a modern movie goer would never recognize. They had all these extra cinematic elements put in to the exhibition. So if you went to go see a movie like Oh, Marijuana, which is the second movie we'll talk about today, you would find in the lobby, you'd find posters, you would find books for sale, there would be exhibitions of supposed drug paraphernalia, there would often be lectures by supposed experts on the drug problem, and these would all be this would be part of the show. It would also be part of squaring up, which I'll get to in a minute, but these could often be quite carny and quite extreme. And Dwayne Esper, who made these two movies, have you ever heard of this is a long story, but have you ever heard of someone named Elmer McCurdy?
No.
No.
Okay. Elmer McCurdy was a minor and quite unsuccessful outlaw in Oklahoma. He was killed by a sheriff's posse in 1911, and his body was taken to a local undertaker who shot him full of all kinds of arsenic to preserve the body on the theory that someone would show up and claim it. No one came and claimed the body. the undertaker decided this guy is sitting in my back room, not paying any rent, and not paying for his embalming bill. I'm going to put him on exhibition. So he proceeds to display the body, charging, I don't know, a nickel to anyone who wants to come and see it, to look at the notorious outlaw Elmer McCurdy. In 1916, someone shows up and says, I'm Elmer McCurdy's brother. I'm claiming the body. I want to take it back to San Francisco for burial. The person who claims the body is not Elmer McCurdy's brother. Okay? Instead, he's a carny operator from Arkansas who, then takes the body and proceeds to display it in his carnival in Arkansas. There are a number of links in the story that I'm a little unclear on, but eventually Elmer McCurdy's body finds its way to Los Angeles, as do so many people in show business, and he is acquired by someone named Louis Sonny for his Museum of Crime. Now, Louis Sonny you might recognize because his name shows up in the credits for the first of the movies we're doing today. This is Maniac. He was a business associate of Dwayne Esper, and Dwayne Esper then acquires the body and puts him in one of the road shows for one of his movies. Okay? The movie called Narcotic, which we're not doing tonight, which is a little bit problematic in various ways, but he said, this is a drug addict.
Oh my God. Wow.
This is what happens if you do drugs. You turn into this guy who, and of course, Elmer is not looking pretty good at this stage of his career.
He's a little ripe by this point.
Well, he's like essentially mummified, right? Because he's been so thoroughly embalmed. Yeah. But she's shrinking, and the skin is developing some kind of bad condition. All of which that Esper in his roadshow attributes to the abuse of evil drugs. Elmer has a long afterlife after this. I mean, he eventually gets put in a warehouse in Los Angeles. He's acquired briefly by another exploitationeer named David Friedman, who I think we'll probably come back to at some point in this episode. Friedman includes him as a prop in his 1967 exploitation movie She Freak.
Oh, okay.
And then he eventually he is he's acquired by a fun house.
That's right.
At a place I think it's called Pike.
Yeah, I remember this.
Oh, okay.
It's in Long Beach. And he's used as like a hanging man prop. He's only discovered in 1976 when a television crew sent out to film an episode of The $6 Million Man goes to this fun house. They think that he's a wax dummy. Someone on the crew is told to move the dummy. He does. Elmer's arm breaks off. And they realize that, wax dummies don't contain bone and desiccated muscle tissue. So, the police are called. He's taken to the Los Angeles County medical examiner's office. There's a long process where they eventually figure out who he is. He's in time, he's sent back to Oklahoma and buried in Guthrie. If you happen to be there, you can visit his grave, which is under 2 feet of concrete, lest anybody should get any funny ideas about getting him back into show business.
He is a hell of an agent, I'll tell you.
This gives you a sense of what exploitation was like, right? Because these people were all carnies, and they would pull tricks like this because to promote their movies. That was how it often went. And Mike, I guess you can always, if you're ever on a set someday and things are going wrong, you can always think of yourself, everyone forgets their lines. The production assistants are all drunk. No one can find the octopus motor. You can at least say, look, at least there are no corpses on set.
There you go.
Oh, that's fascinating. I love that story.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the sort of thing that happens in road showing. And Dwayne Esper was like a great road shower. He was probably a difficult human being. David Friedman, if you listen to the audio track of Marijuana, there's a second audio track where he discusses what he was like. He said he was shrewd. He was mean. People were afraid of him, but he was a pretty good businessman. And he was able to, do a good job. His company was solid enough that he actually had a building someplace in Hollywood. I think I've located it at where he owned Dwayne Esper Productions. He had a building at Willoughby's Avenue and Seward Street in Hollywood, which I think is still like a place where you have film labs and things like that going on today. He lived from his dates are, 1884 to, it's mistyped, but he died in 1982. Hildegard Staddy, his wife, was often the writer, and as she was on both of the movies we're seeing tonight. Now, there's one other thing about exploitation, which I guess seems worth talking about here, which is you will notice that in both of these movies, they've got something which they call a square up. The square up is an attempt to mollify censors, and what it is it's an attempt to show that the movie that you're about to see is being made essentially for educational purposes.
There we go.
That's
in other words, you're basically saying you see, this is about the terrible menace of drugs, or in the case of Maniac, this is about to raise awareness of the terrible menace of mental illness. They are putting these things in to have someone see them, and then also a lot of the extra cinematic elements are like the lectures and the books and so on. They're there partly to make a profit, partly to promote the movie, but also partly to pretend to the local authorities that what you're really doing is something socially conscious, even though you're basically a carny and you're there to make money, right?
Right.
Well, yeah, because it's pretty funny when you watch these movies and there are no lessons to be learned.
Well, there are minor lessons to be learned. I mean, marijuana, as we'll see, shows you good ways to hide drugs. But
yeah, neither of these are really about what they say they're about either. They just kind of they go, yeah, it's about drugs or something, but also it's about this lady who's jealous, and it just becomes very weird. They all kind of go off on these random tangents, and I like the movies better that they don't follow the whole morality thing of talking about drugs or whatever the hell mental illness we're trying to discover in Maniac.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of them presenting these as educational pieces to people.
Sure.
You'll learn something. I hope they didn't bring the children.
Well, in a number of cases, these movies were age segregated. They wouldn't allow people under 16 in or 17 in. Or if they allowed high schoolers in to the VD films or something like that, it would be, again, we want to save some if we can save but one young person, right, from the menace of marijuana or syphilis or whatever it is that they're making the movie nominally about, then we have done a good and noble thing, and therefore you shouldn't run us out of town.
Yeah, and then they end up watching softcore porn for an hour and a half.
Well, you did mention that Dwayne Esper and his wife Hildegard, they are the people who created these two movies. Yes, it was a husband and wife duo.
Yeah, I saw that.
She wrote 6 movies, so not all of his movies, but about half of them, because he directed 12 and he produced 20 of them. She wrote both the movies today, and apparently her background was that she started her life as a child. She traveled around with a patent medicine peddler as a little girl,
God.
her uncle, I believe. And she went all the way with him across the United States, selling their cure-all, which was tiger fat. And a part of the presentation was apparently that a preteen Hildegard would get nude on a stage with a python draped around her shoulders and sell tiger fat to the audience.
Okay.
Wholesome entertainment for the whole family.
Yeah.
Yes. And so through that, she then met Dwayne, and they got married, and he produced these movies that she wrote. And these are 2 of the most infamous ones they've made. In terms of, I guess, a cult following to them. I think when it comes to 1930s exploitation, everybody's heard of Reefer Madness, which is on one of the DVDs you sent me here. But I'm glad we're covering these 2 as opposed to the more famous Reefer Madness, which is a great movie in its own. But I was excited to see something I'd never seen before.
Good. Yeah, I mean, he has just going down Dwayne Esper's list of directorial or production credits gives you a strong sense of what he's like. What he's got: Sinister Harvest, The Seventh Commandment, Narcotic, Maniac, Modern Motherhood, 1934, Marijuana, How to Undress in Front of Your Husband, Sex Madness, Curse of the Ubangi, and then the final one was a movie with 2 titles, either Will It Happen Again or The Love Life of Adolf Hitler.
So I see what audience he's going for.
Yes, definitely.
How to Undress in Front of Your Husband, by the way, was packaged with the second movie we're covering today as a double feature.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And the description for that one is: a peeping Tom likes to look through windows at women undressing. We see him as he sneaks a peek at 2, quote, subjects. His first one, a young woman. This is an IMDb description. His first one, a young woman who apparently has a major lingerie fetish, is young, shapely, and attractive. The second one, to be charitable, isn't. That doesn't stop him and the viewer from getting an eyeful. So I guess it's just about a guy looking in windows and you see the ladies undress.
It's not a way out, it's a way in.
Yeah. I don't know where that involves the husband at all, but that's in the title. So I guess you got to keep it educational.
Yeah, exactly.
Russ Meyer can eat his heart out, right?
Yes. Sex Madness, however, is about... oh my God. It says a sex exploitation film including wild parties, sex out of wedlock, lesbianism, etc. After going to a, quote, casting couch, a chorus girl contracts syphilis. Then the film focuses on the effects of this lifestyle and disease as it has on her marriage. So it's about a lady getting syphilis.
Right. The educational part is like in the last, minute and a half of the film. Backloaded behind all the sex and all the fun stuff you'd like to see.
Well, they want people to leave the theater thinking they learned something right at the end, Chris.
Exactly.
Apparently, though, Dwayne had skirted the law quite a few times, and that because he had screened his own movies, he was almost arrested multiple times for obscenity charges, but he was apparently, according to his IMDb, never tried or convicted because of either using his charisma and charm or just sheer luck.
God. I could see him trying to... It's for the kids! It's for the kids! He's being led away in handcuffs.
Yeah. Why don't you have some free tickets so that when they go in, he skips down?
One for you and the wife. Come on.
So, Faustus, do you have any more background for these movies, or should we get into the background of the cast real quick here for Maniac?
I mean, I've got a fair amount on the cast for Maniac. So yeah, let's go. Let's move forward on that.
So this
I do have one note that this movie was made, according to Dan Sunny, who is one of Esper's business associates, was made for $7,500, which is $145,000 roughly in today's money, but still.
Yeah, very cheap. And do you think they borrowed a set or two for this movie?
Well, I think they obviously stole whole footage, right? Which we'll probably get into at some point.
Oh, yeah, I love that part.
But yeah, they probably borrowed a few sets as well. Or, filmed without permits. And
it seems like a very Ed Wood type of situation.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But this movie, believe it or not, guys, is a loose adaptation of an Edgar Allan Poe story called The Black Cat.
That's right.
Yeah.
The brick wall didn't give it away.
And so apparently most of the cast members in this movie are uncredited, and some of their identities, they say, still remain unknown. Apparently, and I don't know, I didn't find him on IMDb, but apparently the cat farming neighbor, as well as the detective, the morgue attendant, and the woman who the doctor brings back to life are apparently unknown.
Okay.
So I don't know if anybody's tracked him down on IMDb or not, because we know that's a thing where a lot of these women, especially women in the cheerleaders who never wanted to give their real names, have all been outed on IMDb, which is, I guess, kind of sad, is that they probably don't want anybody bugging them, but somebody's going to find eventually. Here's the other thing, is that I saw that an Arthur and historian named Brett Wood, no relation to me, has posited that the backyard cat farm seen in this film was possibly a real illegal operation that somebody had running in the back of their LA house.
Oh, yeah. Cat boxing was a scourge back then.
Yeah. Also, was there ever a time in this country that cat fur was in demand?
Well, it was the Depression.
True.
So they're like, well, any fur you can get, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, ish.
I mean, did they run out of raccoons or something? Or like, what?
I having not been through it, I can't tell you if I
Make a note for future research, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, I have written down only two cast members, so I'm sure you could fill in some gaps for me here, Faustus. But Bill Woods, also no relation, who plays Don Maxwell in this movie. He only appeared in 3 movies. He also appears uncredited in Marijuana, but the other one is just another 1930s exploitation movie.
Mm-hmm.
Horace B. Carpenter, who plays the Doctor.
Look at those number of IMDb credits.
Oh, yeah.
He has more than maybe Frank Welker. He has 397 credits, almost all uncredited, though, which is weird. Is that apparently in like the 30s and 40s, if you weren't like a main player in a movie, they just wouldn't credit you. So he's all over the place, but most of his roles, almost all of the 397 are uncredited.
And the parts are all labeled as rancher, townsman, bartender. He has a long career. I mean, it begins, in 1913? Goes all the way through to the end of his life in 1945. But this must have been, in some sense, a high point because his character actually has a name.
Yeah, and he was credited.
That's right. Yeah.
And he also apparently directed 17 movies. So yeah, he had quite the career back then. That's all I have. Faustus, do you have any others that you'd like to share?
Well, I noticed looking at some of the characters. The assistant director on this movie is someone named J. Stuart Blackton. I wasn't able to find out a lot about him, but he directed a huge number of movies in the silent era, and his directing career begins in 1898.
Wow.
That's amazing. That's like 3 years. That is only 3 years after the Lumiere brothers did their famous, demonstration in Paris, where they're showing of like the train arriving in the station and so on.
Yeah.
So this guy is present almost at the inception. But almost all of these 188 directing credits, mostly shorts, are in the silent era. But there's one in 1933, and then there's this. I wonder what his story is, because it sounds like he must have been down in his luck or something. He just, his career collapsed after sound came in. And this was maybe something he was just given. I don't know.
Yeah, you said he's the AD?
Yep.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
Jesus.
that's... man.
Yeah.
Then the guy goes to this photographer is someone named William Thompson. He has a lot of cinematography credits, and he would go on apparently to do the cinematography for Glen Glenda and Plan 9 for Outer Space.
Oh wow, I knew that name
wow.
was familiar.
So he links the schlock in a very interesting way. There's everyone knows everyone in this world, I suppose. Then what else?
I would say though that the cinematography is not bad in this first movie.
I mean, the lighting is awful. Everything indoor looks like it's lit with whale oil.
Yeah,
but it's actually relatively well shot. A bit of curious trivia: the character of Mrs. Buckley is played by an actress named Phyllis Diller, but not the comedian.
I was going to say, jeez, I knew she was old, but man,
Yeah.
And the neighbor, the one that gets interviewed by the detectives at some point, is named Marion Blackton, who was significantly a writer. She has 12 writing credits in the silent era.
wow.
So a lot of sort of marginal talent found employment out of the $7,500 budget for this movie.
Do you think that's what they put out in the sheets around town, looking for marginal film talent?
That's Mike. That's up in LA today.
Yeah, well, all the time. That's whenever I post something for a short, low budget thing. I just say marginal actors only, please.
Right. Yeah.
So, guys, this movie starts, and I got to say, I love this title card that comes up for Maniac. It is great when it just comes on the screen. It looks great. We get that, the 1930s type of, I don't know, public domain type of music that they have with these things. They all seem to have the same soundtrack.
It seems like there's like 2 seconds of something cheerful, and then it becomes very mournful. Like it looks like there's missing footage here.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I don't have it written down, but the beginning of this movie has a very long Star Wars crawl about fear and how it's a contagious disease, and the only way to combat it is with faith. And
the plane, in and of its physical self, does not sink any more as any musical instrument can give forth melody without the touch of a musician's hand. And it goes on and on and on and on like this. And it's attributed to someone named William S. Sadler, who was a real psychiatrist, by the way. I think Esper stole a lot of things, and this is one of them. Sadler was famous. He was a psychiatrist who may well have been crazier than some of his patients.
Oh man!
I have a short anecdote about him. He is famous as someone who originated a piece of esoterica called the Urantia book that occultists today still are somewhat interested in, and it came because he had a patient who came to him complaining of sleep disorders. He would talk in his sleep. And when he talked in his sleep, he would narrate dreams in which he thought he was a space alien. And at some point, Sadler came to be convinced that either his patient was a space alien or was being used by space aliens to dictate this book. So he was quite a character.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, Esper's a weirdness magnet. What can we say?
Yeah.
Right?
So then we get some card talking about how fear creates criminal maniacs, and that the Chicago Crime Commission made... Okay, now this seems like a very dubious claim, is that the quote Chicago Crime Commission had made a survey of 40,000 convicted criminals and concluded that every single one of them suffered from some sort of mental disease.
Yeah, I'd like a fact check on that, please.
Yeah. And so then we cut to a movie that has, I would say, very little to do with mental disease. I mean, a little bit, I guess, but
maybe the people who created it.
We cut to, the classic, these mad scientists working on some sort of machine or something. And this old doctor...
They're named Meyer Schultz and Maxwell. Meyer Schultz is like a typical, stereotypical mad scientist with sort of a Harpo Marx-like fright wig.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And big, thick glasses and a beard. And he speaks in a kind of fake Germanic accent.
Did he also have that like headband, that old doctor headband thing with like the saucer on it?
I don't think so, but he does wear a Howie coat. That great mark of the mad scientist.
Yes.
It's this old doctor in Maxwell, and the doctor's holding this giant syringe, and he's like, "Well, I'm ready to test my work on a human. So Maxwell, I want you to go get me a body from the morgue, the one who committed suicide." And
carbon monoxide gas suicide.
So she's going to be perfect. She's ready to go and test my new experiment on. And Maxwell's like, well, do we have permission? And the doctor just kind of gets really pissed. And he's like, what do you mean? You owe me. You owe me all these things. Like, how dare you ask if I have permission? No. Go and take the body.
It is time for you to show your gratitude for my generosity. Maxwell is apparently a down-at-heel vaudevillian.
Well, by the way, somehow we don't learn this in the beginning of the movie.
No,
we just think
not at all.
This is like his Igor or something, and then you learn that he's like this amazing impressionist.
Yeah, he's basically Dana Carvey in that Turtle movie.
Yeah, he's the master of disguise in Dana Carvey. So yes, Faustus, he says, apparently, yes, go on. He's a down-on-his-luck vaudevillian.
He's a down on his luck. He says, you can use your ability to impersonate the coroner. And that will get us into the morgue. This provokes a very unpleasant reaction from Maxwell. There are so many weird lines in this movie. This is one of them. It is horrible working on the dead. You and your weird ideas. And Meyer Schultz's response is, once a ham, always a ham.
Yes. And the lines that are okay, can we talk about the delivery of these lines? Because it's just like everyone is getting like not their type 5, they're type 50 in every single it's a monologue is what they're delivering here. Like
they're ready for the award, Chris.
Right. Like,
and it goes to
damn. Yeah. Yeah. Like there's no one else in the room when these guys are speaking. It's incredible. Like this whole thing is one big demo reel for the next project.
Well, if you got to be in this movie, they're like, I'm gonna use it all. So I'm gonna get some good clips out of this thing.
Yeah, yeah.
He tells him like, yeah, you're great at impressions, so you're gonna impersonate the coroner. We're gonna go get ourselves a body. He finally agrees, and I'm just wondering. I go, well, by the way, in the middle of this, at some point, we cut to like this cat hissing, kind of off screen, and we're wondering what that's about.
It's a black cat called Satan.
Oh, is the cat called? I didn't catch that. The cat's called Satan.
It's relevant for another one of the really weird lines later in the movie.
Oh, okay. I get it now. Okay.
Yeah, I think Chris is going to have a major problem as this movie goes on with a certain scene, and I can't wait to get to that.
Yeah.
And I'm sad that Bobby's not here, because I know how he really, really hated the violence against dogs. And I feel like he finally got his revenge, even though he's not on this episode. He's probably going to be very satisfied in what we have to talk about later. But this guy, so the old guy, like, and Maxwell, they go off to the coroner, and they're going to go there. Apparently, they're going to go to the morgue. But however, the morgue, well, it seems to be on the set of a Universal Monsters movie. Is the problem?
Yeah,
because, they're all. It's a great high vaulted ceilings with brick.
Yeah, as the LA morgues usually are. Yes. It's
Well, it is 1934.
Yeah.
but it's pretty funny. It's like, this looks like some sort of like torture chamber or a dungeon that was used in another movie, and they're like, can we borrow the set or maybe just sneak onto it because I got a key for it in the middle of the night. It's like kind of the Ed Wood thing where they go and they steal the octopus prop. It feels very much like that. We're like, okay, we got like 3 hours to film this scene, so let's just get in, get out, turn on the lights. Nobody will know.
You know they're filming this like at 2 a.m. until like dawn.
Oh, as Faustus pointed out earlier, it's lit horribly.
Yeah.
Like they just kind of run and gun, really. Like there's no setup or anything. They're trying to get out as soon as they can, you know? And so they sneak into Dracula's castle to find this lady they're looking for in the morgue, the suicide by carbon monoxide, and the crazy doctor injects her with a syringe, and then they start rubbing her, and we just kind of cut away to 2 morgue hands. Now, Chris, you talk about performances.
Yeah.
These guys aren't talking to anything.
Oh my God.
Okay, as I wrote in my notes, I go, how many times do you think the director had to tell that guy not to look at the lens?
Yeah.
Like, the one big guy, he is trying so hard not to look at the lens. He's like so close to looking down the barrel of the lens every time he delivers a line. And I feel like Dwayne is just sitting there on the end going, look at my hand. Look at the hand. Don't look at the lens. You keep... And it's just on and on with him, just kind of like his eyes drift towards the camera and then they like snap back to whatever is off camera that he's supposed to be looking at. If I could drop in some of these lines, I will, because their performances...
Yeah.
Excellent.
Tor Johnson outshines these guys by,
Yeah.
by grunts and moans. Tor Johnson can just steal the Oscars over this movie. Thank God.
Yeah.
Between the gangsters and the auto drivers, we don't need another war to carry off the population.
You didn't even mention suicides. They even got the coroner working overtime. Say, did you see the beaut that come in today?
Did I?
She's the one that has the coroner doing the night work. I wonder who that old Santa Claus is.
And so here's the thing is like, why I'm thinking they definitely filmed this quickly is because none of this makes any sense. It goes so fast and so bizarre. They're
I'm glad I wasn't the only one. I was like, what is going on here? What is happening? Like
they're commenting, they're commenting on the action, right? Because they're saying, like this embalmer, he says, between the gangster and the auto drivers, we don't need another war to carry off the population. Thanks for the observation, Mr. Optimist.
Yeah.
And then, did you see the beaut that's in today? She's the one that's got the coroner doing the night work.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they look. Then apparently they can see the doctor and the fake coroner, who's Maxwell, and they're like, and they're just narrating to us what they're doing.
Yeah,
they're just basically like narrating what's going on off screen instead of just showing us it.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it just ends with that girl from the table just getting up, like the Bride of Frankenstein, and then they just leave.
They take her back. Basically, Meyershut says 24 hours of rest, she'll completely recover.
Well,
yeah,
so it's,
we'll see.
It's standard mad science thing. Revive the dead.
Yeah. She's become like a Selena bot from Robotrix or Robotrix.
Oh yes.
Now
we think there are some complications, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was Herbert West, not without his complications as well. So we'll see.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. So now we go to the morgue hands are now telling the police captain about what they saw. Because apparently they know that something was wrong because a dead body walked out of the morgue, and they're like, yeah, something weird went on. And here's the thing: is
some good back of the head acting in this particular scene too.
Now, did they tell him that it looked like it was a guy that looked like the coroner? Because
I think that one of the characters in this scene is supposed to be the coroner, but it's kind of hard to tell because he's facing away from camera.
Yeah, it's very confusing, but apparently the detective knows right away. He goes, all right, round up all the vaudeville impersonators. Get them all. Get them all.
They know it's... The morgue attendant says it's some old fellow who looks like Santa Claus, is his line. And this reminds, I guess, the coroner of Meyerschultz, who's apparently a well-known and respected medical researcher. He calls him a really great research scientist. No body snatcher. But it does occur to the officer that Maxwell is working for him, and Maxwell is wanted by the police.
There must have been a very strong resemblance.
Yeah, he was a dead image of him. And talked like him, too.
Oh, you talked to him?
No, he was talking to some other old fellow there that looked like Santa Claus. As I said to Jake, he had whiskers and bushy hair, and his eyes was wild, and it must have been some other two fellas.
And you know, this is the one thing is like, I would really love to know the backstory of how Maxwell and this doctor met. Like, we never get into it or why he owes him anything, but I really would love to know the backstory of how these guys got together.
Yep.
Other than the convenience of making this movie.
Right.
So now we're back at the crazy lab, right? And the old guy wants Maxwell. The doctor wants Maxwell to get him another body, apparently. This one with a shattered heart. So he's like, okay, we got the one body. Now you want another? Like, come on, man. What's going on here? And so he has this heart in a jar, and his plan is to get somebody with a shattered heart. Now, does he mean literally or figuratively a shattered heart?
I think he means figuratively, because he says he suggests that at the Undertaker around the corner, conveniently, there's a gangster that was shot today. Just the thing. All right, so Maxwell is supposed to go and retrieve the body of this dead gangster.
Yeah.
But fails.
Oh, yeah, in a very bizarre way.
Yep.
Where he just crawls through some vents back into the morgue, and then he gets scared because two rabid squirrels just start fighting each other on the floor of the morgue.
Cats.
Those are definitely cats.
Were those cats in the morgue? Because there were cats on the street.
Okay, no, there were cats in the morgue.
There are cats all over this movie.
Yeah.
But there's also mice everywhere. So you need the cats to get rid of the mice.
Right.
But at the same time, Yeah,
the cats are non-union. They were too expensive.
Yeah. And also, it doesn't speak well of LA's morgues at this point, because all the bodies are apparently in rodent-infested rooms. So it feels like you're going to do an open casket, and there might be a hole in the body, or a mouse climbing out of a coffin or something. But he gets.
We should have gone with the premium package.
But apparently he gets afraid of two cats fighting, and so he runs out of the street, and then there's more cats fighting. So there's just like a huge cat riot going on at the moment.
Yes, yeah.
And so he comes back, Maxwell comes back to the lab, and he's like, well, I couldn't get the body. And the doctor's all pissy about it. He's like, oh, God damn it. And he's all mad. And then he laughs hysterically. He opens a drawer and he pulls out a gun and he gives it to Maxwell, and he's like, well, go get a body.
He tells Maxwell to shoot himself, right?
Yeah, he's telling him, because he tells him to shoot himself.
Shoot yourself in the heart, and then I will take this heart in the jar on my desk, and I will transplant it into you, and you will be back. Maxwell, understandably, is less than enthusiastic about this particular plan.
Yeah,
he thinks about it.
Then he shoots Meyer Schultz instead, right?
Yeah. So he shot the doctor, and then
this is not thought through very well.
No, and then we cut to a card, because it's time for some learning, guys. The more you know, right?
Cheerful music.
As it says,
dementia praecox.
Yeah, dementia praecox, which is the most important of psychosis. And there's this long description about it, because, we got to learn, guys. We got to learn what's going on. It almost feels like not only is it like... these are concepts you'll never understand, is what they're showing to the audience. It's also like, this shit don't make sense. So as long as we put some titles, we'll just pretend we're smarter than the audience. So if you don't get it, it's on you. It was all there.
Yeah.
Right. So now we cut back to the lab, right? And Maxwell, he kind of feels bad about killing the doctor. And then he just gives this really weird long monologue.
Oh my God. And his eyes are looking directly at the cue card the whole time, which is obscured by now we're going to overlay these shots with footage from apparently Dante's Inferno is what it could possibly be.
Yeah.
I think it's called Hexen.
Okay.
Somebody once told me. Yeah.
Cool.
Stolen from somewhere, some other much better movie.
Right. Because I was instantly more interested in the footage that was overlaid. I'm like, now that's a movie. That I want to watch.
Now that's a movie. So while he's giving this monologue, and like you're saying, Chris, he's really projecting to that live audience with this monologue.
This is a stage production, but someone brought the camera and said, well, make it a film.
It is kind of that era too, where people are still like facing the camera while they talk, like they believe they're still on stage.
Yeah,
they haven't really grasped the idea of talking to the other characters much.
Yeah, because he had to cheat, obviously, to get to the audience. So I think there was a transitional period where that wasn't really developed. Well, at least this director, he had no idea what he was doing.
No. So here's the thing: is that Maxwell decides, well, I gotta hide this body, right? Guys, we'll see. Because the next thing that happens is the doorbell rings, and he answers it, and some lady comes in, and she's looking for the doctor. Mrs. Buckley comes in. She's looking for the doctor. She says, I need to see him because this man, now is it her husband or who is this guy?
Her husband is Mr. Buckley is having these terrible hallucinations. Yeah. He thinks it's the orangutan from the murderer from the Poe's Murder in the Rue Morgue.
Right. And that's their drop for Edgar Allan Poe, the foreshadowing, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is funny because so this is her husband, right?
Right.
Well, we'll see how much she cares about her husband as the movie goes on. Because here's the thing is she goes, all right, well, I'm going to go get him and you can get the doctor. And then before he can even get out a word, she leaves and he goes, no, oh, damn it. Now what am I going to do? So he goes into the lab, guys. He pulls out this box. He starts cutting his hair and he's decided that he's going to put on one more vaudevillian show. His most elaborate disguise ever. He's going to become the Doctor.
Performance of a lifetime.
Meyer Schultz would be missed. Maxwell never would. Right?
That's his line. That's right.
But here's the thing as I write, while he's doing this, how far did this lady have to go to get to her husband? Because he's taking hours to do this transformation. Because not only does he cut his hair, he dyes it white. He had to run out to the store and get bleach or something.
He's a professional.
Ah, so he had it in the box.
Yeah, it goes where where he goes. It's like a musician always has a harmonica on him or something like that.
I'm sure parking in Los Angeles is always a problem as well. So.
Yeah, even in the 30s, people are like, God damn. If it's street sweeping day too, oh my God.
Yeah, it's five guys with big, large brooms hosing it down, blocking traffic for hours.
So Maxwell then, for the final touch, he takes the glasses from the doctor. But guys, he still hasn't hid the body. It's just sitting there in the lab, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I'll get to that later,
Yeah.
He's like, I don't see how this has to do with any other part of the movie. Cut to a new title card. Paresis, which I have written down. General paralysis of the insane, or paresis, is the most serious disorder of for the criminologist. There is marked failure of memory, poor retention, impaired judgment, and failure on the part of the patient to curb his primitive tendencies.
Do you think there are people in the theaters taking notes, with the notepad, paresis, looking up and down, just trying to get this all in? Because this is the real thing.
This is actually, I think, an example of someone. This is another example of Esper stealing stuff to improve the prestige of the movie.
Yeah, because
it's attributed to a book called Crime and the Criminal by someone named Philip A. Parsons. This again appears to be a real person. I was able to find a copy of this book. Or at least the entry for it in a university library catalog. It was published in 1926 by A.A. Knopf, so it's actually very high prestige. And this is squaring up, right? This is saying, oh, we are taking this very seriously, mental illness, quoting major authorities. Yeah. So,
and what's interesting is we put this whole description, and I'm wondering if we'll cover any of this in the next scenes. I wonder if any of this will have to do with paresis. We cut to Maxwell, and he's working on the sick man, the hallucinating husband. And he goes into the room, and he tries to concoct some sort of medicine, but then he realizes that he's not a doctor.
He says, okay, I'm going to give him an injection to relieve his stress. This is what he tells Mrs. Buckley.
Yes.
This is an amazingly weird scene. He goes into the doctor's laboratory. He goes through Meyer Schultz's black bag. He pulls out a syringe. It's labeled super adrenaline.
Yes. We're just going to calm him down.
That's probably not the right thing. So then he pulls out another syringe, which is filled with water. He says, well, okay, this can't possibly hurt. But then he puts the two syringes down on the bench. He gets distracted or something. One of them rolls away and falls off. He picks up the other syringe, presumably the one with the super adrenaline.
Yeah.
goes in, gives Mr. Buckley his injection with the bad prediction, you will feel better. Now things get really, really strange.
The funny thing about that, though, is if he had injected it with the water, it could have got even worse.
Yeah.
Possibly.
So
depends on how you think the... Yeah. Well, okay.
I mean, I was just like,
effect, right?
Well, I mean, it is LA water, so...
Oh, yeah. No. Trust me. He's done. Like, if it was the water...
Instant hepatitis upon contact.
Yeah. So, as you say, Faustus, he injects him, and...
there is a massive freak out. One of the best in cinema, surely.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is his real demo reel moment for the next Universal Monster picture.
He's going for the Wolfman.
This is acting class, right?
Yes. Day one.
Workshop has begun.
He's picked out his favorite monologue. He's presenting to the class today, and he's not going to fail, guys. He's going to give it his all.
Yeah.
He chases his wife out of the room. He runs around animalistically, and who walks in now?
Well,
a zombie-like girl who I think is supposed to be the same woman that they revived in the morgue.
Yes. Yeah.
Except that she's clearly a different actress.
Well, that lady wasn't coming back. She's like, "What am I doing?" No,
she got both halves. She got both ends of that 50, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, that's right. She got both ends of the 50. Never showed up the second day. Like, God damn it! I told you we're supposed to give the other half when she's done. So the thing is that she just wanders around, a different actress. Maybe they had another body they got that they revived. You don't know. It could have been a whole different thing. But she is just wandering around the house just like she was before. So in 24 hours, she's not better than she was when they first injected her.
Well, she's ambulatory. I mean,
yes, but the crazy man grabs her, carries her out, and that's it. He's gone.
He's gone from the house. We'll see him in a couple more scenes.
Well, okay. The thing is that now Mrs. Buckley, is that her name? Yep. Goes into the back room and she goes, "Hold on a second. There's a dead body in here. This is the doctor." He just kind of looks at her and goes,
"You shot your assistant."
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so he never hid the body?
Yeah, nope. and she has or hasn't met with the doctor before. She would recognize. So how much of the body has she seen? Has she seen his face, or has she just seen the body with the face covered?
Because as we see it, she just sees like half the body. We don't see the head.
Yeah. So he made kind of an effort. And
then he's like, I shot the assistant, but not to worry, I'm going to bring him back alive. It's all part of an experiment. And she's just like, I knew you were weird with your experiments and all, but this is something else. And then I'm just sitting there wondering, I go, well, is anybody going to address the fact that your husband just went crazy and carried a woman outside the house? Are we going to?
Apparently not. It's just like, well, so that happened.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. She's just like, easy come, easy go, I guess. And so then we cut to that guy, the crazy man, and he's, he gives the audience a little thrill because he takes the girl's top off and kind of walks around the yard.
Carries her off into the woods. How do you like that, Mr. Production Code? Do you like that?
And this is the point when the director's just standing up and going, it's educational, officer. It's educational. See, it's a crazy man. And that's what they'll do. That's why you don't go to quack doctors, because they'll carry out a naked woman and undress her. It's all educational. So then we go back to the lab, and they don't care at all about the crazy hallucinating husband. They've moved on in life, and they're more interested in how they can bring the doctor back to life.
Yeah.
Mrs. Buckley has a strange monologue where she says, if you bring your assistant back to life, he will obey Meyerschultz.
Yeah.
And if Buckley is dead, she will obey me if he is brought back to life.
That's right.
How she can be so sure of how all this necromantics work is your guess is as good as mine. But she seems very confident.
Yeah. And then we cut from that to, a rape starts happening in a field. Yep. Again, very educational. No problems. And then some guy shows up at the front door. This is maybe my favorite character in the whole movie is Catman.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So
see that.
This very creepy neighbor comes over and he's like, I'm looking for my cats. Have you seen any of them? And we go and we cut to that inside shot of the black cat staring. Now he's staring at a heart container the same cat from earlier in the movie. And Maxwell's like, nope, haven't seen any of your cats. And he's like, are you sure?
Thought you might experiment on something.
Yeah, and he's like, nope, never heard of it.
There's a great line, actually. He says he denies that he's been experimenting on his neighbor's cats. And the reason that he gives for this is, I think too much of Satan to use cats for experiments.
Yeah, and that's where we're going to call back to the black cat named Satan.
Oh,
right?
All right. So then
one of those lines that's better out of context than in, I would say.
Yeah,
definitely.
So he goes back, he basically gets rid of the cat man, but don't worry, he's not gone from the movie, everybody. He will come back. But we go inside and, well, Satan's been a bad kitty. Because you remember how there was that heart in the jar and he had all this grand plan of necromancy, like getting him. Yeah, well, Chris, do the cats like the taste of hearts?
I don't make me. Don't make me.
He's the cat has got the heart on the ground, and we just kind of see like some quick shots of him batting it around like it's a cat toy.
Yeah.
And then Maxwell's just like, well, I'm fucked now. I don't have the heart anymore, and I definitely can't revive him now. Not like he knew how to before, but now he's really up shit's creek. So he goes, well, I guess I'll just bring them to the basement. And this is when I wrote in my notes, I go, this is becoming a real quad ed zone.
It is.
Because
he's going to dress him up like a clown next?
Chris, I had that written in my notes. But he brings the doctor down to this basement, and he's going to like put him in this wall that's like some sort of like chimney or something in the basement.
Yeah.
And while he's burying him, Maxwell starts to go crazy because they're like, oh, yeah, this is a movie about mental illness. Somebody's got to start going crazy other than that rapist guy. And while he's like putting him in the wall, the black cat... for what is it that the black cat does that he gets pissed? All of a sudden, Maxwell just like stops putting the doctor in the wall, and then he just starts chasing a cat for no reason?
I believe there's a dialogue line that says he sees a gleam in the cat's eye. And this is a dialogue line that we will come back to a couple of more times, I think, at least once more. The gleam is probably a reflection of his growing paranoia. And whenever he sees it, he believes that that person has it in for him. So he's concluded the cat's against him. And this is why he chases down the cat.
Yeah, so Faustus, what does he do when he catches the cat in the most infamous scene in this movie?
Oh my god!
Well, I want to say that the cat that he actually catches is a different cat.
Yeah.
I guess the people who were making the movie were hoping that they wouldn't notice that they were now using a one-eyed cat.
Also, a completely
for the notorious
completely different color cat.
Size. Yep.
It's like an orange cat now.
I mean, I'm sorry I have to do this, but I will repeat the line. He pops the cat's eye out. Yeah. He holds it up, looks at it, and he says, "It is not unlike an oyster or a grape. Look, the gleam is gone." Then he pops the cat's eye in his mouth and eats it.
We finally had to watch a movie where a cat got hurt. He didn't die because he ran off, and also the cat was already had one eye. So apparently this cat was treated better than the animals in Milo Notice because he actually lived. And they didn't really poke a cat's eye out, but it's disturbing.
No. Yes, very much so.
Yeah. So then we cut to the next title card, which is Paranoiac. This is an extremely rare but very serious disease. Characteristics of it are fixed suspicions, persecutory delusions. The paranoiac is often particularly dangerous because of the difficulty of detecting his disease. Now, this is not accredited to anybody. So this one is just either from somewhere they couldn't quote or they made this one up.
Yep. Either works.
Yeah. So now
whatever sells.
So now he's finished the job of putting the body in the wall, right? So he's got the doctor behind that brick wall. And while he's doing it, he doesn't notice that the black cat jumps into the wall while he's having another hallucination about another movie that they've stolen footage from.
Yep.
And the cat gets in there, and he locks the cat in the wall too. So he puts all the bricks up. Then we see a detective walking around outside asking the neighbors what's going on at the doctor house. And the lady that he interviews here has a very interesting response about all of this stuff.
Marianne Blackton here. This is the woman who has the writing credits, the actress. There's lots of queer stuff going on up there. Why, they brought a dead dog back to life once. those that monkeys with what they've got no business in gets queer sooner or later.
And he goes, she said something about, like, she goes, I even heard a gunshot there the other night. And then...
Why didn't you notify the police? Well, that's their business, not mine.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not getting involved with that stuff.
Ever. That's their business, not mine. Love that.
So then the cop goes to see the cat man. Okay, so the cat man goes, hey, how you doing, officer? Like, nothing's wrong. And he goes, hey, wait a second. What do you got here? And he goes, oh, it's just my cat farm. I keep thousands of cats in my backyard. Thousands. And I go, okay. And then he says to the cop, he goes, I know the doctor's been stealing some of them for his experiments. And I go, if you have thousands, how would you even notice one missing?
Thank you.
But apparently this man runs a cat zoo. Well, so he's like the Cruella de Vil of cats, because he has thousands of cats, and he goes on this monologue about how he skins cats for their fur, but the cats have to eat the rats, and then the rats eat the cats. It's very confusing.
Yeah, it kind of...
Cats eat the rats eat the cats, and I gets the skins.
Yeah.
And the cop just kind of repeats it like this is some big joke, and the audience is supposed to be laughing at this point. And we're all confused as hell. And then he goes, so did you hear a gunshot? And he goes, I don't care. That's basically it.
Oh, yes.
Like the movie just sort of wandered into this cul-de-sac here for a little while.
Yeah. Do you think while they were filming, they were like, we got to get that shit on camera? Like, did you see that cat farm? And he's like, can we film here? Yeah, why not?
Right?
Pad the runtime out a few minutes.
Yes. Oh, they did that.
So then we go to, guys, it's been a little while since we've seen some educational nudity. Wouldn't you say so?
I would say so. I forget how anatomy works.
Well, 10 minutes at least.
Yes, so what we really need is an examination of how young ladies live together, apparently, in like a studio apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Hotel room, I think they refer to it at one point.
So there's a bunch of ladies in a hotel room sharing one bathroom, and they're just kind of like going on and on about how they talk about men. And did you notice that like one of the ladies has the voice of like a munchkin?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was wondering, like, is that her real voice, or is it supposed to be like a joke? Did they have to dub her over or something? Like early ADR or something?
Yeah, I don't think they would have had the budget to go over anyone's voice in this movie.
She was like one of those actresses where they're like, she's going to have a rough time once we transition to sound. It's not going to go well.
No, yeah.
With light, fleecy coverlets made by the great American press.
Press? That reminds me, I have pressing business.
So, and by the way, I do love that one of them starts using that weird belt vibrator thing that you see in all those old...
Like Three Stooges or something?
Yes, like I'm not sure what it actually is supposed to do, but you put yourself in a vibrating belt that apparently vibrates your waist area. Do either of you guys know what that's actually supposed to do? I've always wondered this my whole life.
No. Aid digestion, no idea.
Yeah.
I always just thought it was like a Looney Tunes type of thing. You'd always see it on there, but I'd never actually seen somebody applying it.
That it really only exists inside of movies, and that it's like some kind of very complex joke that everyone in Hollywood is in on and no one else knows.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Aristocrats or something.
Yeah. And so that she's using the thing, and they're all talking about men, and they're like trying to find husbands or something. And then they read the paper and they go, "Oh, apparently there's something about this Maxwell guy who's a vaudevillian, and he's inherited a huge fortune from some sort of like dead uncle in Australia or something."
Yeah. Yep.
Now here's the thing. Is this supposed to be a plant by the cops, like how they used to do like giveaways, and they would tell criminals you've won a free vacuum and you just got to come to this address to claim it, and basically what they do is that's a way to serve warrants? Is that when a guy would come down for the prize, you arrest them?
I don't think so, because in the, as we'll see also in the next movie, in the Dwayne Esper universe, cops don't really need warrants.
Oh yeah. So apparently Maxwell has become an overnight millionaire.
Yep.
And so this girl is like, oh, well, I'm going to go get me a husband then. And so she comes down to go see the doctor because she wants to go ask where Maxwell is. But Maxwell is playing the doctor. So she thinks she's talking to the doctor, but she's actually talking to Maxwell. And she goes, oh, hey, where's your assistant Maxwell? I wanted to tell him that he's become a rich man and I'd really like to meet him. And the doctor's like, oh, well, he's around and everything. And she goes, well, can I talk to him? I want to tell him that he won all this money or inherited all this money, not you. And he's like, oh, okay, I guess that's fine. And then we cut to another title card for Manic Depressive Psychosis. Which there are 3 phases of manic depressive psychosis: the manic phase, the depressed phase, and the mixed phase. In the manic phase, ideas come so rapidly that there is no time to select the proper reaction, and judgment accordingly appears impaired. And reaction and judgment accordingly appears impaired. Such patients are often liable to commit sex offenses. Okay. So now Maxwell, as the doctor, is
about to commit a sex offense.
Yeah.
It's hard to know how to interpret these scenes. They may be fantasy inserts and reflect Maxwell's deteriorating mental condition.
Ooh, yeah, because we don't know who this lady is. It's just a random lady that's on a table, and there's like a quick shot where he's like kind of undressing her. There's also that scene where she's like standing so we can get a little nudity on screen for educational purposes, like behind a changing screen. And then she's on this table, and then it just fades a lot. And it looks like he was going to inject her with something, but then he doesn't. And I don't really know what's going on. I assume it's just like you're saying, it's his mental state being shown on the screen. We might be giving him a little more credit than he deserves for that.
That he deserves.
Yeah. So now it's later, and Maxwell then tells, okay, he's like talking to himself, and he's convinced now that girl who I've just called Gold Digger is trying to kill him. Like, she's just trying to like somehow get to him, not to take his money or something, but just like
she's actually his wife, right?
Wait, that's his wife?
Yes, this is Maxwell's wife. Do you remember there's an intertitle card? It's obvious. It's hard to miss because there's just an intertitle card that says Maxwell had forgotten all about his wife.
Yes.
Until, okay, so she's aiming for the fortune, and she has a good aim. Has a good chance of getting it too, because she's his wife.
So he. Okay, man, there's a lot that happened off screen before this movie started. What happened off screen seems to be more interesting than what happens on screen. But he apparently has a wife that he forgot about, and then he started to work for this crazy doctor. And now all of a sudden his wife shows up. He forgot that he even had one, and she's like, "You're rich," and he goes, "I think she's trying to kill me."
He says, "I see the gleam."
Okay. Oh, so he's going to either pop her eye out, or we don't know. So then he enlists the wife of the crazy guy,
Mrs. Buckley.
Who, by the way,
right,
guys, what happened to the crazy guy?
He's basically gone out of the movie at this point.
Yeah, that's a wrap on him, huh?
Yeah, they Gatorade wrapped him, and he was gone.
Yeah. He headed for the hills, and he's not going to be seen again.
I felt like there was going to be a little after credit stinger. Or maybe
just running around naked and greased up.
But no, so apparently everybody forgot about him, and she's moved on. And he tells her, he goes, okay, I think that my wife is trying to kill me, so I want you to eject her. And she's like,
right,
okay. And then we cut to a scene where he's talking to his wife, and he goes, this lady is crazy. I want you to eject her. And she's like,
one or both of them sensibly asked, like, why don't you do this?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And his response is just very weird. It's just like, oh, I can't get close to them or something. Like, what?
Yeah.
She will try, I think one of them has like, she will not be afraid of you because you are a woman.
Right.
Yes.
I guess that works. It's kind of weak, but
although you're the doctor, so if somebody walks up to you with a syringe, they wouldn't be that suspicious. Mm-hmm. But if a strange woman does, they'll be like,
we may be overthinking this, guys.
So yeah, well, here's the plan, because this is the worst plan ever, is that he invites both women down to the basement, and they're like, okay, this seems fine. And then they kind of just look around confused, and then Maxwell slams the door behind him, and these ladies just get into like a hardcore wrestling match where they just start like grabbing things and hitting each other.
A real cat fight.
Yes, a literal cat fight. Yeah.
Meanwhile, the police are on their way. We see stock footage of police cars driving someplace.
We do see that the Catman makes another appearance. So no, they didn't cut him out of the movie. He gets to peer through a window at one point and just kind of sees this shit going down. I think he's the one who calls the cops, but I'm not sure.
Right.
Which, by the way, is a great way to get him off your tail because he's worried about the cat farm being raided. So then these ladies get into a long fight. And this is what I'm just like, why are they still fighting each other? Because the doctor is like laughing. Maxwell's just laughing and laughing and laughing. And they're just still fighting each other. And at no point did they turn around and go, wait a second, what the hell are we doing? But they just keep going and going and going until the cops show up and they hear the screaming downstairs because they're talking to Maxwell up in the lab. He somehow magically got up there.
Right.
And then he's like, oh, they go, what's that screaming downstairs? And Maxwell's like, oh, it's nothing. Just some ladies. And they're like, okay, we're going to have to go check that out. And they go down there and there's these ladies fighting to the death. And the funny thing is that like the cop's not really taking it seriously at all. He's just like kind of walks over and lightly pulls them apart. He's like, all right. And the only reason anything happens is because the cat from inside the wall starts crying like an Edgar Allan Poe story. Right. Yep. They open the brick. They find the body of the doctor. And whoops. And there's one last title card which says maniacs are created by inability to adjust to the world as it is. Insanity is our defense against a world which is not of our making or to our liking. The normal person can make such an adjustment. It is not always easy, but it is being done constantly. The person of inferior mental capacity cannot do this. He therefore creates. And there was more, but apparently I forgot to include it.
Not that it really matters.
Yeah, it's all just babble.
And then this final scene, Maxwell, behind bars, right? Staring at the camera. Meyer Schultz, my supreme impersonation. End of movie.
Yep. And we don't even get to know what happened to the crazy guy.
He stole the show. By God, we don't know if he got the role. What grade he got? Was it an A and a B? Jesus.
I mean, I was hoping that he would show up in Marijuana. Like, he just kind of wanders on the set. Like, that would have been great if it was, like, one of this director's, like, his recurring...
This guy just runs through the scene in every movie he makes thereafter at one point.
Yes, yeah.
Right? It would be like the Alfred Hitchcock cameo.
Right?
Yes. And he's always carrying the same reanimated corpse with him. So guys, we move on to Marijuana, which I guess we could say right now. We'll do it at the end and whether we recommend these or not, but let's move on to Marijuana.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Sure. So 1937's Marijuana, guys, which stars Harley Wood as the character of Burma. She has 20 credits. This was her second movie. She began her career as a radio actress and in the 1934 entered films. She then became much, much more famous as a songwriter and a singer. Yep. Her most famous hit was Let There Be Peace on Earth. Also, her stage name for singing was apparently Jill Jackson Miller, so it was not Harley Wood. And again, no relation, Harley Wood. But according to her daughter, this film was the one regret she had of her entire career. And I wonder why.
Think about this. There's another Ed Wood parallel here, right? Because Dolores Fuller, Ed Wood's first girlfriend,
yes,
the one who's played by Sarah Jessica Parker in the movie, also goes on to become a great songwriter. So she was like the one person in that group that actually became big in show business in any way.
The other person I have did not become big in show business either, is Hugh MacArthur, who plays Dick. 10 credits. This was his first movie. He really didn't do much else other than some, uncredited roles in the 30s. But what's funny about this is that in the movie, when they show a clip of him in the newspaper, they say he's 19. Guys, he was 31 when he made this movie. And he looks every bit of 31, which is very funny because all the characters are apparently supposed to be playing 19-year-olds in this movie.
There's Paul Ellis, who plays one of the criminals. I've lost his name and can't find it in my notes. But he actually has a huge career in Spanish language. He was born in Buenos Aires.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
His name was originally Benjamin Italo Jose Ignacio O'Higgins. He has 109 acting credits over a 50-year career. beginning in a silent movie in 1924 called The Bandolero, and he ends in the 1970s with a well-regarded Spanish television series called Crónicas de un Pueblo. I have been unable to determine whether he's related to the more famous O'Higgins. The O'Higgins who were the people who founded Chile, but he might have been. And he plays a very endearing character, actually, in this movie in many ways.
Yeah.
It's a good performance.
It's weird because he's supposed to be a criminal, but he's like, you're right, he's very endearing.
It's kind of nice. I mean, there's also Richard Erskine, who appears in, or Juanita Crosland, who also appears in this movie, is the mother of Alan Crosland Jr., he's the guy who directed the original Wild Wild West and was also a director. Here we go again, the $6 Million Man. So it all comes around. I just wanted to note that one other member of this cast has a long history in television. The guy named Hal Taggart, described in the credits as Burma's customer's husband, would appear in The Wild Wild West, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., It Takes a Thief, Bonanza, Love American Style, The Partridge Family, and he would also have bit parts in The Graduate and Topaz. You could still get work even after you appeared in a Dwayne Esper movie, apparently.
Just in TV.
Yes.
No movies, just TV.
No, he was in Topaz, and he was in The Graduate. So,
okay.
Wait, he was in The Graduate. Holy shit!
I mean, a bit part apparently, but still in the.
I guess they didn't get to this point in his career. He left it out on the resume before in his headshot.
That part of his CV wasn't stapled properly. And
okay, so I do have a little bit of trivia, guys. Where Burma's heroin customer lives later in this movie, and the Aloha Apartment Hotel, guys, it still stands.
Field trip.
Guys, it is in Hollywood, 6731 Leland Way.
Don't tell them now everyone's going to go and ruin it. No kidding.
Hey, it's now called the Leland Apartments, and somebody wrote, as of 2014, it still stands. But the fountain and the tiled fountain, the lanterns, and the Aloha sign are now all gone. But it still stands, and I'm sure the rent is very cheap now. So. According to Hildegard, who wrote this movie as well as the first one, the main character of Burma Roberts was inspired by a real woman, Burma White, about whom little is known, is what it says. And apparently it also was the case of another radio program called The Burma White Case for a radio show called Calling All Cars that they made in 1933. Yeah. She adapted this.
That's such an obscure homage, if there ever was one.
And in 1938, Roadshow Attractions distributed this with the short film, as we talked about in the beginning of this, How to Undress in Front of Your Husband, 1937. So it was a little duo. Both only for educational purposes, guys. So we get into marijuana, and the first thing we see is a long title card, just like the first movie.
At least 2 minutes for each one.
Square up. This may actually be worth reading in full because, boy, is it something.
I do have it written down if you want me to read it.
Sure, let's shoot.
For centuries, the world has been aware of the narcotic menace. We have complacently watched Asiatic countries to rid themselves of the drug curse and attributed their failure to lack of education. Ooh, hard takes already.
They didn't have these films around to educate themselves, Mike.
We consider ourselves enlightened and think that never could we succumb to such a fate. But did you know that the use of marijuana is steadily increasing among the youth of this country? Did you know that the youthful criminal is our greatest problem today? And that marijuana gives the user false courage and destroys conscience, thereby making crime alluring? Smart? ?
Sold.
That is the price we are paying for our lack of interest in the narcotic situation. This story is drawn from an actual case history on file in the police records of one of our large cities. Marijuana, hashish of the Orient, is commonly distributed as a doped cigarette. Its most terrifying effect is that it fires the user to extreme cruelty and license. That's the beginning of this movie.
Yes.
Wow.
Would you say that's accurate, or...
Ask Cheech Marin.
There's a lot of hard takes about, quote, Asiatic countries.
No, Bronson was standing up going, yes, like shaking his get him.
I got to say, hard to take as that is, this is not as bad as the other big scare movie Dwayne Esper made about drugs called Narcotic. which contains one of the most offensive yellow-face performances you'll see in quite a lot of
Oh boy!
And you didn't pick that one for us to watch?
I got a reputation to uphold here, guys.
Right. He was above the bin.
It would have fit real nicely with the Cinderella Pooh from Catch the Heat. Oh, man.
Checkers Goldberg is blushing right now. Somewhere.
Yeah. It wasn't played by Tiana Alexander, right?
No, I don't think so.
Is it worse if it was or if it weren't? That's the thing.
We start with that warning about marijuana, right? The quote, hashish of the Orient. But then the next thing we see is it says beer, 5 cents, free dancing. Yep. So we're fine on that drug, just none of that devil lettuce, okay?
No.
And so we're in some club where the patrons are drinking and dancing, and they're dancing very 1930s style, where apparently all you did was just kind of lift your feet up and down real quick.
Right.
Also, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but this really fucking pissed me off was that waiter who's like juggling a tray around like a jackass. You know what I'm talking about?
He's got to make those tips, Mike. He's got to somehow get the crowd excited.
That really bugged me. Because he's kind of like going all around with it, and he's doing all right. It's like, just serve the fucking drink.
Yeah.
We should note that the bartender in this establishment is the same actor as played Meyer Schultz in the previous movie.
Yes, yeah. This is like his little cameo, I guess.
Yep.
And then so these are probably my two favorite characters in the whole movie. Is that there's two old people that are always at this bar who endlessly complain about the bar and complain about the kids who are at the bar.
Yes.
And one of them says something about how I wonder if their parents know they're here. And the lady says, if my parents went to a place like this, I wouldn't be here. And we're like, okay.
Yeah.
And I just write in my notes, I go, so why are you here?
They like the music.
Yeah.
Beer is only 5 cents.
Right.
Well, yeah. Take it where you can get it, I guess. And what was the drinking age in I assume this is Los Angeles, at the time that this movie was made?
I mean, I think it must have probably been 18. Although there's a reference. There's a reference some point where there seems to be some distinction, perhaps, between beer and liquor.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that these characters are quite young. I mean, I think they're actually in high school, although they might not be. Maybe they're a little older.
From what I could tell, that Burma is still in high school, and Dick has graduated because he's 19.
Yeah.
And so he's looking for work. But Burma is apparently still in school because there's reference to her doing homework.
Yep.
Yeah, and going to class. And we should say now that every single one of these people do not look like a teenager.
They look like about 30.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. As I said, the guy who plays Dick was 31 when he made this movie, and Burma looks about the same age. I was shocked when I was like, "Oh, school. They must be in college." Oh, they're teenagers. Oh,
well, okay. Senior year was the best 4 years of their life.
We should note this particular tavern or roadhouse scene also has a pee joke.
Yeah, this bizarre sight gag.
Actually, a couple of bizarre sight gags. There's a guy like failing to pour beer into his glass, and it looks like he's urinating on the floor. We get a reaction shot to that. There's also like a joke involving a hot dog, which comes later. But I have to say something. The production values for this movie, Marijuana, are a lot higher than they are for Maniac. This is a fairly well-lit scene.
Yeah.
It actually, it looks like they knew what they were doing. There are shots that are from overhead. This does not look worse than a lot of things you might have seen, or at least I've seen from, say, Monogram or Republic Pictures.
Oh, yeah.
This looks like competent filmmaking in many ways.
Well, it feels like to me that they filmed a scene here during the day, and Dwayne just somehow convinced one of the PAs to leave the lights on and the camera there.
Yep.
He's like, hey, how about you just don't pack it up for the day and take this money, and we'll make sure everything's turned off and fine by the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Because it just it's actually too well made for one of his movies.
It's suspiciously well made. Yes.
Yeah, suspiciously well made. I like that. So yeah, we get that weird sight gag with the guy pissing. We get a montage of drunk people dancing, couple making out, and then the next thing we see is like Burma's family. So Burma's family is very well-to-do. They are like incredibly wealthy from what we can see outside. Like they live in this giant home, and the inside of the home is very, it's whatever set they're using is very rich furniture and all sorts of things. And the mom is talking to, I believe it's Burma's sister.
There's Widow Roberts, because I think she is a widow that's mentioned at some point.
Yes.
Certainly no father is in the picture. She's sedately doing her sewing, and she's talking to her daughter Elaine, who's being courted by a swell young fellow named Morgan Stewart.
Yes, and they are to be married, apparently. Yep. They're engaged. Burma is the sister, the young sister of Elaine.
Right.
Yes.
Burma is just very jealous because Elaine's getting all the attention from Mom, and she's going out for the night, and Mom keeps dropping hints like, well, Burma, when you find a husband, I'll care about you too. And she's just all jealous about it. So then we cut to like Burma and her friends. They're at the bar, right? Yep. And that's when we get introduced to two of our other main characters, who I just called Hat Man and Cigarette Man, because one of them was always wearing this great hat, and the other guy has always got a cigarette in his mouth.
I think their names are Tony and Nicholas. Tony Santello, Nicholas Romero.
So Tony is the Hat Man in my notes, and Nicholas is the Cigarette Man.
Yep.
And they're looking at some guy at the bar, right? So there's this like weird, creepy guy at the bar, and they're just kind of like giving him the eye, like they got some sort of business or something going on with this guy. Tony walks across the dance floor, and that's when this is one of the weirdest things I've seen, is that for no reason at all, like while the people are dancing, they drop balloons on them.
Yeah.
And then all the people just kind of, I guess it's like New Year's Eve or something. I don't know what the hell's going on, but
it's like you go to Pleasure Island at Disney World and every night's New Year's Eve parties. So it might be that kind of a joint, you know?
That sounds horrible.
Well, people go.
That sounds like some sort of purgatory, Chris. Yeah. So the balloons start raining from the sky, and then all these people are like, and they just start like trying to pop them and grab them and all this stuff. It's very weird. But Tony walks past, and he kind of bumps into Burma, and they just share a smile together. And then the old curmudgeon people are still here, still complaining about the kids. But what are you going to do when this is your local watering hole and this is the only place to get 5-cent beer? I guess you gotta put up with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then we watch some dumbass try to balance a beer on his head. That goes about as well as you'd expect. As he falls over, and I think he dies because we'll never see him again. And I think he cracked his head open. That was it. And so then the Hat Man Tony comes over and he like hits on Burma, but then like the creep.
You forgot that there's also like in the course of this scene, there's like a slightly too elaborate drug transaction.
Yes. That's when the creepy guy from the bar gets up.
They go over to the men's room. I think it's Tony takes something out of the heel of his shoe and hands it over. This movie is very big on ways to hide your drugs.
Yes.
Yeah, he has like a Maxwell Smart type of shoe. Yeah. Where he opens it and there's like a contraption in it. I thought that was great, by the way.
Yeah. I know for the New York screening of this, they weren't allowed to show a lot of the drug concealment.
Really?
Yeah, I was reading about that. So a lot of the scenes for the New York showing, they did not show a lot of these scenes because they're like, no, don't show them how to do it. We don't want them. No, you don't want to educate. That was too much education for the audience.
So what? Did Dwayne just jump in front of the screen and just go, don't look here, don't look at this part?
They would have cut the thing out of the reel shown.
Right.
Now, you think Dwayne would go to that trouble? Do you really think he'd go to?
He would have got. Well, I mean, the person who would have probably done it would have, if it was being states righted, it would have been the actual distributor and not Dwayne.
Right. Exactly.
But also, this actually is an opportunity to throw in one more bit of exploitation trivia, which is a secondary meaning for square up, suggested by David Friedman. I don't think he does it on the second audio track of this movie, but he does it somewhere. There was a square up procedure where all these things that were cut would sometimes be put into a separate reel. And then it would be shown at the end of the performance, like presumably when the authorities had gone home.
Oh, okay.
You get that?
Yeah.
It's like Cinema Paradiso or something like that.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So, I don't know if that was actually done in New York, but it was often done, especially with like scenes of nudity or something like that.
Yeah.
To calm the audience down and get them to go home and be happy.
Yeah, so like, no, just stay at the end. We got a little stinger at the end of it. We'll show you some deleted scenes.
The original deleted scene.
I just would really love the idea of Dwayne turning on the lights and going, look over here for this part. Hey!
Jingling keys.
Yeah. And so, yeah, he's like hiding drugs in his shoe and stuff. And like some drunk guy is trying to go into the bathroom, but Cigarette Man won't let him go in until the drug deal's done. And then that's when his name's Tony, right? Hat guy. He comes out of the bathroom and whatever went on in there is done. Then we cut back to that drunk guy that was at the bar. And I'm assuming this is the same guy who did the sight gag pee joke
Yep.
He is...
He's trying to eat a hot dog, right?
God.
Now, you say eating a hot dog. I don't really see much eating going on.
I said he was trying to. I didn't say he was succeeding.
It's like a man trying to shove a hot dog in his mouth, and he's like dunking the bun in a martini in front of him.
I think the idea is the hot dog squirts out of the bun and lands in his beer.
So
and then somebody looks at this across the room and says, "Hey, that would be a great idea. We could have a weenie roast."
Yeah. They go, "Hey, let's have a weenie roast next Saturday." And that's when I wrote, "How old are these people?" And then we'll find out they actually are the age of that they might do that. And Tony goes, "Hey, if you're doing a weenie roast, you can use my house next weekend at the beach." And they're like, "Well, that sounds swell, mister. We'll come to your strange house." Sure. Great. So they make a plan for next Saturday. They're going to have a weenie roast. And then we go to Burma and Dick. So Burma and Dick are a couple, and they've driven up to Mulholland Drive, and we're going to catch some illegal footage because I'm sure they do not have permits. And they drive up to a secluded spot with their car, and he's getting a little handsy. And I noticed this, I believe it's a little bit of the Ludwig Vaughn that's playing in the background.
They do have some, yeah, they do.
It's Johann Strauss's Blue Danube Waltz.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I found very strange about this scene is that it's supposedly diegetic music. I think he's like playing it on his car radio.
Yeah.
But it plays at the same volume all the way through the scene, even at times when this car is presumably hundreds of yards away, as we will see.
Hell of a sound system. System.
It gave me a very Clockwork Orange vibe when I was watching this.
Definitely. Yeah.
It just reminded me a lot of when they broke into that woman's house. And I was just like, oh.
Stanley Kubrick, you fucking hack.
So then, he's getting a little handsy, and she's like, no, we can't have any action until we're married.
Another one of these great Hades Hildegard statty lines. If a couple of drinks is going to make you answer the call of the wild, I won't go with you anymore.
And he gets all handsy with her. She gets out of the car, and this is funny to me, is that she just starts wandering around Mulholland Drive by herself, right? And then Dick drives off, and we just cut to shots of both of them, and she goes, well, that'll teach him a lesson. And he goes, well, I'll teach her a lesson. I go, well, Burma, I think you're getting the short end of the stick here.
We see her take her heels off, by the way. This is in a close-up.
Yeah.
And it won't be the first... It will not be the first close-up of her feet in this movie. Somebody, possibly Dwayne himself, has an interest in her feet and shoes.
Do you think this is why she said it was the one disappointment in her career?
Well, it's probably overdetermined. There are many possible reasons why this was but I could see this as one of them.
Yeah. And he's like, hold on. We're not done for the night. Can I get some shots of your feet? Yeah. Take off the heels for me. Take them off.
And let me drink out of them.
Yeah, wait, where you going with those? You can't take them home. Those are mine. They come back with me. So eventually, they just apparently learn their lessons because Dick drives up and she gets in the car and they just make up and the scene ends. Burma arrives home very late, but she comes in and she talks to her mother and she says, how come I can't get an evening gown? I want to be like the other girls. And it is a good question because they seem to be very wealthy, but the mom just says something along the lines of like, well, Burma, your sister's getting married and she gets all this stuff now, but when you get married, then you can have some nice things too.
She says we must sacrifice a little for Elaine. I guess I read this a little differently as they're upper middle class, but they're probably stretching an inheritance. So that,
okay.
Like at some point, Burma complains that she gets Elaine's hand-me-downs.
Yes.
Okay.
So they may not be actually all that wealthy.
Right.
Although if they sold this giant estate that they live in, they could cash out pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good, man.
Because it is a massive home in Hollywood. And it's kind of funny because every time they pull up in front of it, I wonder to myself, I'm like, I wonder if they were even able to shoot there. Because all the scenes outside go very quickly, if you notice. It's like there are certainly no lights or anything. And it's like, all right, go. He won't be home till 12. Go.
Yeah, then the maid sees out the window and goes, nope, calls the cops right then and there.
Yeah, you'll never find me. And then they drive off. And so then Mom, she asks Burma, she goes, have you finished your homework? And that's when I go, wait, how old is Burma? And that's when we find out like she's in high school because the next day Burma and Dick are outside the house for a quick shoot. And he goes, hey, we're going to the beach tonight. And she says, well, I can't go because I gotta do my homework.
That homework alibi is wearing a little thin, isn't it? I also have in my notes here another close-up shot of Burma's feet.
And yeah, like right when they're about to wrap for the day, he's like, we got a few minutes.
Yep.
Turn on the camera. Point him at the feet. And she's just standing there uncomfortably. So we cut to the weenie roast. This is the thing, though. There's no weenies being roasted, and I was really disappointed in that.
Yeah, I wanted to see the gathering. I wanted to see the jovial with just wieners on coat hangers.
I don't know about you, but if I'm invited to a weenie roast, I expect a weenie.
Yeah, I'm bringing buns.
It's like you get invited to a party and nobody, like, there's no food, and you're like, all right, well, come on.
Yeah, right.
So there's no weenies being roasted, but there's minds being roasted, guys. Because people are drinking heavily. They're drinking so heavily they're dancing on tables of a strange man's house. By the way, they're dancing on his table, and that's when Tony. Well, oh no, it's the other guy. It's Tony, and what's the other guy's name? I keep calling him Cigarette Man.
Nick.
He goes over to a brick. Oh, guys, I wonder what's buried inside that. It could be a little Maniac reference here. There might be a dead doctor that pops out. But no, in this wall, there is a mysterious box, and he places it on the table. But before we can really find out what's in that box, one of the partygoers, a woman, grabs a shotgun off the wall and threatens to kill everyone in the whole party.
You haven't been to that kind of a weenie roast? Holy shit, Mike, you're missing out.
Well, yeah, she wanted the weenie.
Right.
She's like, what the fuck? I was promised a weenie, and if I don't get one, I'm gonna fucking shoot this elephant gun off in this. And he's like, all right, let's put that down. That's a real gun. That thing's
Someone
live.
get her some pot stat.
So he convinces her. He's like, no, come down here. We got something special for you. And so Tony goes, all right, guys. He puts that box down, and all the ladies gather around. None of the men. The ladies gather around to smoke some of these funny cigarettes they've never seen before. You know, in your typical movie about marijuana, they take one hit and everybody just starts laughing hysterically.
Right, and then you go to Chili's and have a freak out.
Yeah.
Yep. If only, right?
Yeah.
Instead,
you know, at this point, this is the point where the girls should have been like, are we ever going to get some fucking weenies around this place or what? It's the perfect opportunity. So later on, guys, the marijuana has taken its effect. And the ladies, I don't know about you guys, but every time I smoke, I just start laughing and getting crazy and climbing over banisters and all sorts of shit, right?
Well, you have it easy. I get crippling anxiety, so have fun.
Yeah, if they were made a drug scare movie today, Chris, it wouldn't be that the man's going crazy running around. He would just have crippling anxiety on a couch.
And then there'd be a title card saying crippling anxiety and a description of what it says.
Yeah, a long-winded fake medical description of it.
It's just an hour of me like clenching a sofa arm.
Yeah, it's just an hour of you clenching hard. And then when it passes, you go, okay, I think I'm all right. And then that's how it ends.
Yeah. I think I'm going to drive home now.
All right. So now the ladies, they're getting crazy. Burma just won't stop laughing. And at this point, like, Dick's getting really annoyed with her.
He doesn't look very happy.
You're
acting like a fool, Burma, he says.
And at the same time, one of the girls decides, what better time? If I can't get a fucking weenie at this party, I'm going to go in the beach. Like, I'm going in the water.
Named Joanne, strips to her underwear, runs out into the water. It's very dark. Then four of the other women, girls, whatever, in the party pursue her and decide they'll go for a swim too.
And so they all take off their clothes, and we get a little every 10 minutes we got to get something, a little taste.
Yeah,
we get a lot of nudity for a 1937 movie, that's for sure.
Yeah, this is hard than soft before there was ever like hard than soft.
It's educational, Chris. This is what happens when you smoke the devil lettuce. You want to get naked. How dare they? And I don't know if you noticed, like, what you're saying is right, is that, Faustus, you mentioned that there's a lot of nudity for a 1930s movie, so much so that they had scenes where they would, like, the ladies would run in front of something and the camera would strategically be placed behind its own self-made censor bar, like a couch or something, where they would cut off all the naughty bits, I guess.
Naughty bits.
But not here. As Friedman points out on the track, you actually get shots of pubic hair in this scene,
which I imagine was very educational for the time.
Quite probably, and probably cut by a lot of the road showers, or the states writers. But it's there. And
you got to wait for the deleted scenes at the end of the night.
Right.
Yep.
You get the full forest after the credits.
They go.
That's how he promoted it.
Yeah.
It's still like a weird drug freak out scene because these women go careening around the beach, screeching all the time.
And it was definitely filmed crazy illegally because all they do for lighting the scene is just have a couple like 4K lights just shine at the ocean.
That was like a Ford Model T with like the headlights on high.
Well, that's the thing, Chris, is that these old cameras, they needed an insane amount of light. Like insane amounts of light. Yeah. Like these inside shots where, Faustus is talking about in the earlier movie where it looks like it's badly lit. Yeah, that's because like you would need like 4 12K lights to light a room. Like it would be like you're on the surface of the fucking sun to get anything in focus. So when they're just shining, it must have just looked like like this giant, the Battle of LA almost, like UFOs flying at the beach.
Like you're seeing God.
The Japanese submarines way off looking, what is going on out there?
And so, they clearly filmed it very illegally because even the focus is a little touchy in the scene and everything. And these ladies are running and screaming and they're getting all the footage they can. And at the same time that they go skinny dipping, Burma can't stop laughing, and so Dick's like, "Well, let's just go take a walk on the beach outside and calm you down." And they end up making out, and we cut away, and we watch more girls going skinny dipping, and then the guys come back, where we don't know where the hell they went, but they all come back and they're like, "Where are all the girls?" And then they see outside the whole skinny dipping thing. Tony and the cigarette man, they're happy because they just talked to each other, and they go, "Well, we've got some new customers." So apparently their plan to get customers for their drug business is to invite high schoolers to their beach house for a weenie roast and get them hooked on marijuana.
Well, they should have brought the weenies because then when you get the munchies, you eat the weenies, and you want to get more high. It would have been a wonderful supplement.
Exactly. But Chris, this is like what we were taught as children, what would happen when somebody would offer us the drugs. Mm-hmm. This is the horror story because we always talk about this where, I always expected in my life from hearing police officers come into my classroom as a kid that at some point in my life as a child, somebody was going to approach me one day and offer me drugs for free.
Right.
And it never happened. And you're always waiting for that day. You're like, when is a man going to come up to me and offer me heroin? It's never happened yet.
Right.
Yeah. But in this movie, it does.
Yeah. Well,
a promise of a weenie roast, and you get some pot.
Well, obviously, I haven't played on stage and left over crack. It rains fucking drugs by the third song.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you just want a hot dog.
I just wanted a hot dog, and I'm getting like pills and shit thrown at me. I'm like, come on, man. How about some mustard packets for once?
So now we get the girls. They start running around inside screaming, and Dick's being just a wet blanket. Like, he's not having fun at this weenie roast. And then somebody goes, "Hey, where's Joanne?" And oh my God.
Joanne needed a buddy at that time. She needed someone. They all should have been in pairs to be safe.
Yes.
Poor Joanne. She basically, he goes out, he finds her, she's washed up on the beach, she's drowned.
Yeah, well, I guess so, because all we see is like, I guess it was a piece of clothing, because I just thought it was like a thing of seaweed at first.
Yep.
I was just like, what? And then, I guess assume that she's dead. And so then Tony basically rounds them all up and he goes, "All right, kids, shut up. Shut up. You were never at this house. You don't tell anybody about it. You don't tell the cops. You don't tell your parents. You just shut the fuck up because nobody will believe you." And they're like, "Okay." Everybody agrees. Cut to a shot of the newspaper. Joanne's dead. Okay, so she drowned. And I believe the headline says, local girl dies at weenie roast.
It just says, actually, the drowning of Joan. They misspell her name, Marsh. It's really a final insult.
Oh.
Did it have a byline where it said, "Joan, not Joanne, drowns at weenie roast" or something like that?
I think it may have said something like, party at the beach or some such thing.
I think, yeah.
I don't recall the words weenie roast in the
I just feel like you said, final insult. It's hanging on the fridge in her parents' home. And they go, "Oh, I thought her name was Joanne." And they go, "It is. It is."
Yeah, the intern was making the obituaries that day.
That happened recently, by the way. I did have a family member that passed away, and no matter how many times they told the paper what town he lived in, they still spelt it wrong. They still spelt it wrong. So we're going to have that forever. So it happens, guys.
Yeah.
So Burma is at home, right? And her mom and sister are like, man, so your friend Joanne like drowned and stuff at this party? Like, what the hell is going on, Burma? And then she, does the typical teenager thing and blames them for it all. She's like, well, I wouldn't have to go to Weenie Roast if somebody cared about me and I got nice dresses. And they're like, okay. And at the same time, Dwayne cannot focus on the scene because he's more interested in this little dog that's appeared. And he just keeps focusing on the dog, and eventually Burma just picks it up and hugs it, and this scene just kind of ends with no resolution or anything.
No.
But we do get to see Elaine's feet again as the little dog approaches. So.
Oh, that was the trick to get another foot shot. He's like, no, we just want to get the dog.
Well, it's sort of it's cinematic. It's meant to be a poetic moment. The little dog is the only thing that really consoles her.
What's kind of weird, Faustus, is now that you bring that up, I was questioning why the dog was halfway cut off in the framing, and it was more focused on feet. Now it makes a lot more sense. So then we cut to Dick. He's picking up Burma outside her house, and then Burma tells Dick, she's like, hey, Dick, so about that marriage thing, when's that going to happen? And he's like, well, I kind of got to get a job. I mean, I have to provide for you if we're going to get married, right? And she's like, yeah, sure, but we need to get married real quick.
She looks down meaningfully.
And he's like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll go talk to that Tony guy. I don't think anything's wrong. I know our friend drowned over there, but maybe he'll give me a loan or a job.
I mean, just to try to make it clear, I think it's very clearly implied that Burma is actually pregnant at this point.
Yeah, that's what we find out, but is it really? It's not implied very strongly.
This is how I read the scene the first time through as saying this. It's sort of hard to say it. I don't know. This is exploitation, so maybe you can say anything you want. But I read this as, we really need to get married now. She looks down, meaning, sort of at her belly meaningfully. So I think I think that was actually meant to be read in the context as, we've got one on the way. So that's why he really needs to go and see Dick to try to get some. He also says, I got Burma in trouble, right? In that scene?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that seems to be the obvious read. It does seem to be the case a lot of times in this movie. We only figure out what was going on in a scene after the scene, because they don't do the scene well enough. They sort of cover it back later you sort of have to backfill it from what you learn later in the movie.
Yes. So he goes over to the drug dealer's house where their friend drowned to go ask for a job. And it goes well because Tony goes, I think I can help you out. I got some sort of job for you. Cut to, we go to the docks, okay? And Cigarette Man is unloading a boat with some of these local boys, and they're all carrying these boxes. And he goes, all right, if anybody asks you what's in those boxes, it's tea. It's really weird smelling tea. And they're like, okay, sounds good. And at the same time they walk out, there's these cops watching in the distance. Faustus, how do the police in L.A. in 1936 handle people carrying boxes from the docks to cars?
Well, apparently they just roll up and open fire. I mean, these guys do not announce that they are police. Nobody wears a uniform. These units are not marked. Nobody shows a badge. Nobody says halt. Nobody says you're under arrest. It's just out we go, and we start shooting and chasing.
They just start unloading every round they got.
Yep.
And okay, here's the thing. So what happens is, because it's filmed really poorly and it looked like they didn't have much time to shoot here and we need to run, is that they shoot in a long shot, and then the next thing we see is Dick hanging on to an awning of a
pier or something like that.
And from what I could see, I thought he was so scared he was pissing himself because water starts dribbling down from his pants. And I was
thought so too.
I saw that as blood.
Okay, because it's it doesn't read as blood in the black and white very well, and I was like, oh, he's in over his head. He's so scared. He's pissing himself. No, apparently it was blood. Well, Dick's dead.
We only learned this, of course, by reading it in the newspaper the next day. There's a newspaper inset shot, parallel columns. This Dick killed by police. This is, by the way, the only confirmation we have that these are police.
Yes,
and not like a rival drug gang or something like that. Just to light up the competition. And then there's the announcement of the wedding of Elaine to young Morgan.
Yeah,
that's really cold, isn't it?
Which is great because Mom's going to see
Burma
that.
Must feel.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, and it says Dick Collier, 19, shot and killed by the narcotics squad.
Yep.
Yeah.
Worst cops in the world.
Hey, it's 1930 rules.
This is early Rampart, is what it was.
The Rampart's origin. Yeah. So now Hatman's at the beach house, right? Tony's at his beach house, and Burma comes over, and she's like, so what the hell happened with Dick? He came over here to get a job, and now he's dead? And he's like, yeah, sucks. And she's like, hey, you know what? My other friend died here at your weenie roast. My boyfriend's dead. I'm going to the cops. And then Tony kind of like turns on her, and you think like at this point he's going to like be, you know, I mean, she's basically talking to like a drug dealer or a mob guy.
Right.
But he takes it a totally different way than I was expecting, is that he just kind of goes, you know, Burma, I know you're pregnant, and I know you got to do something about it. You know, nobody's going to want to marry you. You're going to be ashamed by your family and society, but I got a solution for you. And at this point, like, I never knew that she was pregnant. So I'm like, what? When did this happen?
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, like, when did it actually happen? Like, when they...
Right. When, yeah.
Did they have sex at the weenie roast, or... Because I don't know. Like, it was never implied.
Possible. Yeah. When did that needle hit the record? I don't know.
Yeah, because earlier she's like, get your hands off me. And the next thing we know, she's pregnant.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know.
But basically, he smooths things over by giving her a strange drink and then says...
Like you do.
Yeah.
Unwise move to drink that, Burma, you know?
Yeah, he says that'll soothe your nerves, calm your nerves or something. Because I'm assuming in 1936 they didn't know giving somebody alcohol when they're pregnant is going to make any sort of difference.
Well, he reaches into the fireplace, right? This is another drug hiding scene, right? He pulls out some white powder. He puts it into a glass. He mixes it with seltzer, and he hands that to Burma. And,
okay.
You know, I thought, boy, yeah, I wouldn't drink that, but she does.
Well, these people are very gullible throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
And so then she basically says, he goes, look, we're going to send you away. You'll have your baby and everything will be fine. We'll figure it out. And so the next thing we see is like Burma's mom is reading a note from Burma that says that she's left.
Oh, it's heartbreaking. It says, Dear Mother, you need not worry about me anymore. I am going away for a while. Elaine fills your heart anyway. Burma.
And she's totally heartbroken about it. And Elaine and her fiance are determined to find Burma and bring her back. So then we see, we get to a little more cheery scene. Is Hat Man and Cigarette Man show up at some clinic where Burma is, where she's had the baby, right? And they brought flowers. She's doing great, right? And she's like, everything's going good. This also reminded me, by the way, of the clinic that Burt Reynolds just runs into randomly in White Lightning. You remember where there's just that strange clinic for unwed mothers? It reminds me of very much of that scene. So she's at one of these places, and they're like, okay, well, everything's good. And she goes, well, I guess I'll just get my baby, and we'll be out of here. And they're like, yeah, about that. You should probably just leave that baby and let it get adopted. And she's like, oh, it's my baby and everything. They're like, nah, don't worry about it. We got a way for you to make a lot of money. And apparently she gives the kid up for adoption.
Yeah, I think Tony may actually have a black market adoption line on the side here.
Drugs, babies, whatever you want. What do you want? I got it.
Hardened criminal.
Yeah. So later on, Burma's enjoying some champagne with Tony. And he's like, that's all you're going to drink now, Burma. You'll be drinking champagne every day. You're living the high life because you work with us.
Yep. He actually starts referring to her as Blondie from this point in the movie onward, which makes it a little confusing.
Yeah. And then Burma says, she's like, well, I'm going to put my sister to shame. I'm going to show her, I'm going to show the world. I'm going to be the best drug salesman of all time. And she's apparently going to be the new queen. What does he call her? The White Queen or something like that? The Powder Queen?
Snow Queen, I think.
Snow Queen. That was it. Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's implied at the beginning that they're selling marijuana, but now all of a sudden they're also...
They refer to selling H and C, which I guess mean heroin and cocaine.
Yes, so they're selling heroin and cocaine as well. So I guess it's it's a real gateway drug situation where you get them on the weed and then you move on to the harder stuff.
There you go.
So we get the newspaper montage, lots of sales going on, right? And apparently the whole town is going to hell over this narcotic menace.
There's also a great sound montage there. Screams, sirens, moans, coughs, automobile engines revving up, weapons firing. It's like they really hit the sound library for this one.
I really thought they had that car horn that goes, the old jalopy horn.
All they did to get those sounds was just stick a microphone out the window in LA. Just look, 10 minutes, you got it all. Okay.
Yeah. Gunshots included?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Depends what part of town you're in, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it is the 1930s.
Yeah. So Burma shows up at a customer's house. God, I love this part. So she shows up at the H lady's house. Okay, so this lady who's like a housewife, and she's like, I need some of that H. I need the H train. Come on, you got it for me? And this is so great, is that Burma has become like a stone cold like drug dealer within the next couple scenes, right? Like off screen, she has become a hardened criminal. And she is just looking at this lady with no remorse. And she's like, yeah, well, you got the money. And she's like, oh, I don't have enough, but I really need my fix. And she's like, well, too frickin' bad. And then she looks on her hand and notices her jewelry. And she goes, well, how about that engagement ring? And she's like, no, I couldn't give up my own engagement ring. And she's like, yeah, well, if you want the H, you better give me the ring. And she does.
Yeah.
And so then Burma, I love this, is that she comes home and talks to Tony and the cigarette man, and she immediately walks in the door and she goes, hey, I got a $50,000 idea.
You're leaving a scene out, though, remember?
Oh,
she's coming out of the first of all, after she has a nice parting line from her client. I'm the doll that should be sporting the rocks. And then as she's coming out of this apartment building, the Aloha, which you mentioned earlier.
Oh, yes.
She spots Morgan and Elaine and a little girl named Gloria, who's, like...
Elaine and Morgan were supposed to look for Burma, right?
Right.
Well, they found her.
But they don't know they found her.
She's standing in front of them.
Yeah.
But she found them.
And so, yes, you're right. I should have said that. Because then she comes home and she tells Hat Man and Cigarette Man, she goes, I got a $50,000 idea. But before I tell you, I got to get a pop of H. And so she goes over to inject herself, right? And then Cigarette Man, while she's doing that, goes, well, after a pop, it'll become a $100,000 idea. And I do love that line. And so then Burma goes, well, we're going to make a shitload of money by kidnapping my sister's kid and then getting a $50,000 ransom. Yep. And it's like, okay, well, I guess, if you're if you're a drug dealer, you're into all sorts of crimes, right? What's a little kidnapping added to the
yeah,
list of felonies?
Yeah, it's not like it compounds.
Chris, you done one, you done them all, right?
Yeah, that's what I say.
So later on, we don't even see the kidnapping, which would have been a great scene. We just cut to, they already have the girl, right? And we cut to the scene.
There's one other scene where the woman who has had to give up her ring is having a conversation with her husband. Her husband doesn't know what's going, is unsatisfied with her explanation that she's just sort of misplaced her presumably very expensive diamond ring. So we see him go to the phone book. We see him painstakingly look up the police. I mean, it's something, between podiatrist and something else. He calls the police.
Podiatrist, police.
He calls them, and then there's a montage, or there's like a scene. Is this right? I mean, the police appear to know all what's going on because there's a scene of like a report or a warrant or something being typed up.
Well, yeah, because the husband says to her, he goes, because she says, oh, my ring was stolen. Apparently he doesn't know his wife's on heroin.
Yep.
But he says, does it have anything to do with that woman who always comes and visits you? So, because he apparently knows that some strange woman comes over and visits his wife.
Right.
And so he thinks that she might have something to do with it. So that's why I assumed he knew enough about her to tell the police.
Yes. But he hasn't seen the drug film, so he doesn't know that she's like a heroin addict.
Yeah, he thinks she just steals rings.
Yep.
Because I had a scene written down before this where Burma tries to get that girl to drink some milk, but she's being a real brat about it.
Oh, I think you may be right. There is that scene. The milk is drugged.
Yes, yeah. They try and drug the milk.
She won't drink it. She has to leave. She gives it to Nick. And Nick, once she's gone, pours the milk out.
Yeah, because
you get the sense that he's actually a much more sympathetic character than maybe anyone else in the movie.
Yeah, this is when Nick, the cigarette man, just becomes a good guy for no reason.
Yep.
And so then, we see that whole scene with the heroin lady and the husband, and he's called the cops, and they're typing up a warrant, which is weird because we watched like a minute-long scene of a typewriter working, and we don't know what.
I know, it's like
typing very slowly.
Oh God. This was the typewriter's monologue.
So we cut to Nick is now playing around with the girl, and he's like got a lampshade on his head, and he's pretending to be a cat and everything. And then the cops show up to the house, and he just goes in the other room and he answers the door. He tells the girl, he's like, "Be quiet, be quiet." So then he he goes and he answers the door, and the cops, again, fuck warrants, fuck questioning. They just immediately handcuff him and start torturing him.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the girl has put the broom end on her back and is going meow, meow in a circle. And like, I sat up and said, yes. And the Oscar goes to...
And so the cops start ransacking the apartment because they're looking for a ring. And then he opens a drawer and he goes, jackpot, we found drugs. We came up here to look for a ring, and we found a whole fucking dope ring.
Right.
And so then Burma is getting the ransom from her sister's husband, right? So she goes and meets him in a dark alley. Guys, this is a fucking Shyamalan twist.
Yeah. Shyamalan, you fucking hack.
I mean, of the ages, right? Who wants to take Faustus? Please tell us the Shyamalan twist in 1936.
The Shyamalan twist. The scene plays out something as the following: Burma gives Morgan, the husband and presumed father of the little girl, an article of her clothing. Says, "Do you identify this? Is this your girl?" He says, "I identify this, but I'm not paying the ransom." And then he tells the story of how they adopted this little girl from his wife's sister.
Dun dun dun.
To give her a good home.
It's like the end of The Sixth Sense, man.
And Burma's floored. She realizes she's just kidnapped her own biological daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Dear.
This was a great twist, by the way.
Yeah, I'll give it that.
Yeah. So she goes back to the apartment. The cops have, back in the apartment, Tony comes home. And I love the way the cops, again...
The old flaming wastebasket trick.
Yeah. He walks in the front door of his apartment, and there's a wastebasket on fire. He goes to put it out, and the cops cuff him.
Yeah, that was a big thing in Academy they had to learn. I mean, if you fail that one, fuck, you're drummed out.
Do you think Dwayne Esper didn't like cops?
I feel like Dwayne Esper got caught one too many times with the old burning wastebasket trick.
He's like, fuck again.
This is the part they made him cut out in New York, Chris. Like, not the drugs being hid, but the fact that they're like, hey, they're giving all our secrets. Come on, Dwayne.
Yeah.
So he comes home, he gets arrested immediately, and he looks over at Nick like all pissed off, and he's like, well, what the hell you want me to do, man? They arrest me too. He's like, it's not like I have a choice. And then this part gets like really surreal, is that Burma comes home. Before she even comes into the apartment, she shoots up with some heroin, which, by the way, did she hide the heroin needle in some sort of vanity, like a little end table in the hallway of this apartment building?
Yeah, I couldn't figure that. Was she just like, there's just, well, in LA, you pretty much, you knock over a vase and like pot falls out and heroin falls out.
So it's like a community heroin needle, just like it just sits in, just in case you need a little pick-me-up before you walk in the front door.
Yeah. Yep, before you see the old family.
Yeah.
I guess this is the pre-HIV era, so...
It's like before Ricky comes home to see Lucy, he just gets a little quick shot up of the old heroin before he walks in.
Hit it pretty hard there, Rick.
So she walks in and it becomes like all surreal as she's like kind of like stumbling in all high, and she sees her little girl behind a door and like the cops holding her.
Yeah.
And then as she walks in, she falls to the ground, and Tony and Nick grab her from each side to brace her before she falls. And then the cop just slams the door shut with her daughter in the room, and she falls to the ground. And from what I can see, joints just start raining out of her clothes.
Yeah, like she's made out of joints. Yeah.
The real twist, Chris. Twist. She was made out of joints.
Yeah, she's a human joint.
If you do so many drugs, you become drugs. It's a real metaphor.
That's right. That was the Q&A with the director after the screening.
Yeah, that's right. There's not a dry eye in the house.
Yeah.
Dwayne hits the house lights and everybody's crying.
Well, yeah,
because
they're all red and fucking stoned.
Yeah, and then he goes, who's ready for how to undress in front of your husband?
Thanks, everybody. Be sure to buy the book on the drug menace.
So, guys, do you recommend both these movies, and which one do you like better?
Oh, my God.
Chris, why don't we start with you?
Maniac was somewhat intolerable for me. I was just like, no, just stop. And then this one, it was just so off the wall and just so hilarious, just trying to amp up the threats that they're trying to, imbue upon us. And I'll, if I had a gun in my head, for both these, I say pull the trigger. But in reality, I would say, number 2 for sure.
Okay. So, and the real joke would be, once we shoot you in the head, we find out that you were just made of joints.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a teachable moment.
It's made of movies, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I would second that actual view. It's quite clear that Marijuana is a much better movie, in almost every conceivable respect. And it's actually, I think, it makes a great companion if you're going to watch Reefer Madness or the other things on that collection of marijuana scare movies. This is a definite call. I can only recommend Maniac for the real completist or the real hardcore person who wants to see 30s exploitation.
Well put.
It's really insane. And if you like really insane, which I sometimes do, go for it. But most people, I would tell them to give it a miss.
Yeah.
I'm going to third the opinion. I agree with both of you guys.
We have expert consensus here.
I would say Maniac is, it's kind of like Un Chen Andalou, where, you see it for that one crazy scene. Like Maniac's worth kind of skimming through to see the bizarre cat eyeball scene. Like it's it's definitely something to check out because it's very weird. That or the cat farm. It's worth checking out.
The freak out, I think, actually makes it.
Oh, yes. Yes. The freak out for the character who we wish would make an appearance in Marijuana or any other movies. But do you guys hear that sound?
Oh, my God.
Oh, dear.
How do you think Bobby and DeVito would fit in the world of... you can pick either Maniac or Narcotic, or Maniac or Marijuana, or you can combine them together.
I'm choosing Marijuana.
I'll venture one from Maniac.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna be very good at the voices here, but I would just say, Bobby, do you know that there's a place in Los Angeles where they bring beautiful women in every day? Now, there's a little problem that, they're not alive anymore, but there's this brilliant scientist, Bobby. He's found a way to bring them back to life. Not all the way back to life, but enough. In fact, it's even better. You know why? Because they don't talk back and they don't fight back.
And they love waterbeds, Bobby.
They love waterbeds. So all we have to do is we take the straight arrow, we paint it black, we put coroner on the side, and we're in business.
Oh,
the
man.
Boys are in business. That should be the sequel to Van. It's turn into corner vans. Oh my God, that's great.
Oh, yeah, like a Police Academy type movie with Bobby and DeVito as the coroners.
All we have to do is get our hands on that formula, Bobby.
Chris, what do you think?
I'm going to pick Marijuana. When that woman drowned in the ocean, they never found the body. They never found the body. So
we do know that the straight arrow can be a submarine, Chris.
That's right. So what we do see is kind of a how in the Big Bird Cage they were in the world's biggest periscope. That was a prototype for the van, and so this woman's treading water out, stoned and high. She's like, next thing she just goes under, like nothing but a splash left, and then all of a sudden we see the van. Straight arrow pops out of the water like Free Willy, midair.
This is very Lady Terminator, Chris.
Right, and the van doors are open, and she's inside the van doors screaming, being pulled in as the van plunges back into the water, never to be seen again.
Well, guys, to me, it's so obvious. In Marijuana, we have a girl, and what is she selling? Well, she's selling joints. And I feel like one day, she was over at that pizza parlor trying to hawk her wares. And Bobby comes over and he's like, "Hey, you need a joint? You want to go smoke a joint in the back?" She goes, "Oh, I got one," And this is a match made in heaven, right?
Yeah.
But then we come to find out that, she's a little too intense for Bobby because they get in the back of the straight arrow and she starts talking about her sister and she's gonna make $50,000 stealing her kid and everything. And that's when Bobby just realizes, he goes, "You know what? I gotta clean up my act. I really got. I don't think this is the life for me." And I feel like Dwayne's goal of trying to convince somebody not to be a a marijuana addict worked.
Yeah.
And Bobby, he cleaned up his life and he became a good person. So there you go.
Did he get a good haircut?
No.
Never.
Okay.
No. Please.
Too much to ask for.
Yes.
Hey, I've got a question, actually, that is motivated by the van. And you can plead the fifth on this, or if I've missed it on the episode before, but I have noticed that if you look up the Wikipedia article on the movie The Van, the last paragraph reads as follows. The film is referenced in every single episode of the Grindbin podcast.
What?
A podcast dedicated to the discussion of exploitation films. The Van was the subject of the very first episode. This leads to a running gag where at the end of every subsequent episode, the hosts would imagine absurd scenarios wherein Bobby and Andy, DeVito's character, would cross over to the universe of whatever film they were discussing.
Wow.
Do you know about that?
No, that's news to me.
I knew it was on the IMDb. I don't know if somebody had put it on Wikipedia for us.
Well, there you go. Your fame is rising.
All right.
We've made it to the big time. We got on a webpage.
Thank you for listening to the last episode of the Grindbin.
Yes. Well, thank you, Faustus, for joining us on this mega double-sized double feature, the first double feature in Grindbin history.
A legitimate Grindhouse film experience, if you will, in podcast form now.
Oh, yeah. This might be one of the longest episodes we've ever done. And Faustus, before we end this, do you want to tell people once again where they can find you?
You can find me at my site, eroticmadscience.com. You can follow me at eroticmadsci on Twitter.
Great. And you can find us at grindhousefilm.com. We're Twitter at GrindPod. We're on Facebook on the Grindbin Podcast, on Instagram as well. And you can find us on iTunes, wherever your fine podcast apps of your choosing. And please rate us 5 stars and give us a review. It really helps us out. And if you want to join us for bonus episodes, $2 a month, you can join us on our Patreon. We do weekly mini shows. The whole month of February is dedicated to children's programming, which shouldn't be for children. Bobby and I discussed various TV shows that are legitimately terrifying. You can hear all about that. Yeah, some of them, Chris. I don't know if you've heard any of these, but oof.
Oh, I can't wait.
Whatever you do, don't watch Zoobly Zoo.
Oh, as long as you get my $2, I'll be hearing it.
Well, Chris, you don't listen to the regular show, so I can't imagine you listening to the mini show.
I need the write-off, okay?
Well, let's just say in one of the episodes we covered, there are a bunch of furries. Yes, that's right. Grown people dressed up as animals who find a giant glass dildo in the forest, and a genie comes out of it.
Oh,
it's a very bizarre show.
Shazam 2.
Yes. And we just did one recently, Chris, with you, where we talked about how Bobby from the Van appears in an episode of the Brady Bunch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was
a really goddamn eye-opening experience.
I was not the same. Transcendental.
I don't really have a last line, but I'd like to say this was great, and we should do it again sometime.
Absolutely.
Of course. You're welcome anytime. Anytime. Yes. Just let us know.
All right, guys. Take care.
Hey, Bobby, I got the money.
Dad, I made the team.